Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Ichigo Awakens in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 31, Skyushin Found. Karakura High School. Ichigo wandered through the halls of his school, still reeling from the events in Seoul society and their homecoming. Before he, his dad, and his squad departed for the world of the living, Urahara and Mayuri gave a disturbing description of his current state of being. They predicted that if he returned to his body without the seal, it would be torn apart by the wild Reishi running through his being. They wanted to seal his powers completely, just to be on the safe side because he still had a human life to lead. His mom was home by then, already working on dinner with Yuzu, and for the first time in years, the Kurosaka family was whole and enjoying being a family again. She started catching up to all of the years she missed by watching the videos Ishine made. Everything was fine until she found one that Ishine swore he was going to hide. Ichigo and his sisters fled when their mother became disturbingly like Anohana and demanded what that cradle-robbing hussy, Yoruaki, was teaching her baby boy. That morning she demanded to meet Ichigo's girlfriends to see if they passed the mom test, she called it. "This is my life." Ichigo groaned, not looking forward to this entire week. "I should have known better than to expect it to be easy." He looked down at the small wooden badge with a skull on his belt loop. It was given to him in case he couldn't use Kon for any reason, and they could monitor and control his Ryutsu in case things went south. He understood the reason, but he hated that he was vulnerable again. When he asked Lisa about her thoughts on the matter, she told him lieutenants shouldn't get their hands dirty with grunt work, and then left to join Hiyori at the Shoten, taking the squad with her. "Ichigo!" He heard a familiar yelling as Kigo ran towards him, stopping in front of the hybrid and avoiding a surprise lariat. "I heard from Chad that everything's good," Kigo said, smiling happily that his friends were safe. "But what changed?" he asked as they headed for class, Mizuru joining them. "Well, there's finally a squad of Shinigami here to handle the dead and the hollows," he said as they walked. "I can finally get back to focusing on my schoolwork." He reached his desk as his friends began congregating. Orium wrapped her arms around him, asking for details on his time in Seoul society. Chizuru attempted to attack Ichigo before Tatsuki pulled her back and whispered in her ear, something that turned Chizuru redder than her hair with a look of contemplation. Chad looked at Ichigo with grave eyes that told Ichigo something was up. Urahara, frighteningly enough, was the cheeriest of the group. "Hello everybody," he said with a smile. "What a beautiful day it is. How are you, Ichigo?" he asked as everyone backed away from him. "Urahara, stop that," Ichigo ordered, still looking mentally scarred. "You're scaring me." Urahara merely chuckled. "My apologies. It's just something good happened," he said, displaying his purification cross with 5 points. "What was broken is now fixed," he said, manifesting a small, black, metallic bow. It was surprising for most of them, but for Ichigo, it was a miracle. "Your powers were restored," he said, shocking the rest of the group. Urahara kept grinning. "Yes, my once lost powers were fully restored and I'm finally ready for the next level." He put a hand out in front of his cousin. "I'll always have your back," he said with a smile. Chad put his hand in with no hesitation, followed by Orium and Tatsuki. Ichigo smiled, and before he put his hand in, Kigo joined in. "I'm just a spectator here," he said with a smile, "but I'm ready in any way you need." Mizuru put in his hand next, and finally Chizuru. They looked at him expectantly, and Ichigo could only smile at his friends before putting his hand on top. "Thanks guys. This means a lot," he said as they separated and went to their seats. The day went on without much of a hitch. Sights of the new 15th Division members performing their duties came in every now and then, but overall, everything seemed normal for the teens. Chad, Orium, and Tatsuki never realized how boring it felt after what they went through. The normalcy was relaxing after the invasion of Seoul society, but they all knew it wouldn't last. Everyone headed home, except for Chad, who dragged Ichigo away. "Ichigo, why can't I sense your power?" Chad asked his friend. He wanted to be sure of some things before bringing him anywhere near Skyushin. "They got sealed," Ichigo replied. "There's enough capable Shinigami in town now that I can kick back and relax." He spoke with melancholy. They only come undone in soul society or if the situation really calls for it. He held up his hand. I can't channel or absorb Reishi with these seals on. It's a pain. Ichigo groaned. Chad knew what he had to do. Ichigo was far from helpless, even now, but with the coming wars he needed to keep up his skills. Another skill set couldn't hurt either. You told me that your mother was attacked by a hollow, right? The Fullbringer asked his friend. Ichigo nodded and Chad continued. Then you can manipulate the souls of things. A soul psychokinesis ability. Ichigo raised an eyebrow. Watch. He said, taking off his medallion and holding it in his hand. He opened his other hand as the coin glowed with a pale green light and flew to his other hand. He then pointed to his feet as a pair of green rings resonated from his feet and he disappeared in a burst of speed. I'm told this power is called, Fullbring. Manipulating the souls of objects around us to control as we desire. This is what my powers are. He explained to his friend. Our main abilities come from an object we have an affinity for. Something we care about or we have strong emotional ties to. I'm proud of my arms because they help me help others, but I'm still testing the waters myself. Is that so? He pulled out his badge and thought over his life. Training with his mentors, fighting alongside his friend, reuniting with family, saving people, all off his experiences with his powers, making tendrils of Reishi similar to his come out of the seal in the form of a manji seal. Okay then. He said, not shocked in the least. At this point, he wasn't sure what would surprise him. How did you learn all this? He asked after dispelling his Fullbring. I was approached by a group called Skyushin. Chad said. They already knew about you, Ichigo. That did it. An unknown group knows about him. That surprised him. They're led by a man named Jinjo Kyujo. Ichigo's eyes widened. Before he left, Yokotake told him about the last human who became a Soul Reaper that disappeared almost a decade ago. The man of the same name as the leader of Skyushin. Skyushin Hideout, Saturday. After living a normal, peaceful, week of school, Ichigo and Chad headed for Naraki City, to where the Fullbringers hid. Masaki met with Orium and Tatsuki about their suitability to date her son. She ended up accepting them both because together, they resembled her. She wasn't too happy about the situation, but made it a requirement that she teach them about their wifely duties. There was an awkward time when he came home and both girls were only wearing aprons. Masaki insisted that they continue the lesson until he ran away. Now he and Chad were heading for Naraki as Chad voices his distrust. Jinjo said their mission in life was to remove their powers, which can only be done by a human Soul Reaper. He said, talking about the history he was told. But according to Juushiro, he's a former substitute Soul Reaper. There goes my trust in him. Yeah, stay on guard. The hybrid told his friend, fully aware they were being watched by someone. We'll use them to strengthen ourselves and decided what to do from there. They reached the apartment as Chad opened up the door. They were greeted by Tsukishima, who wore a happy face to see the two new members. Welcome back, Sato. Hello to you, Kurosaki. He said in a calm, friendly tone. Were you followed? He asked. No, we're good. Chad said as the rest of the Fullbringers came in. Well. Ichigo Kurosaki. Jinjo said as the hybrid came into view. I take it Sato has told you the situation. The two stared at each other, studying an opponent in the possibility of a fight. Yeah. I'll help you out. Ichigo said, pulling down his shirt to reveal a chrysanthemum tattoo on his chest. The insignia of the First Division. They locked away all of my powers. Didn't even need to, they just did. Even Jinjo let out a whistle. That's why we're hiding. The former substitute said. Soul Society is cold and uncaring. We have to live in constant fear that they'll never find us. You're the only human Shinigami hybrid we've found in years. The last one tried to kill us, he said while digging out a Soul Pass badge similar to Ichigo's. We're that desperate to get rid of our curses. To live without fear. Ichigo scanned the room to find everyone else nodding their heads, one man feeling the strap that covered what must be a missing eye. Then we're in agreement. Ichigo said, manifesting his infant Fullbring. I'll free you of your curse of fear. You make me stronger. Everyone's eyes widened aside from Chad at Ichigo's swift development before they even started. I've been told I'm a natural when it comes to fighting. He shrugged as Jinjo grinned. Let's begin. He said, turning to Ririka and Giriko. Let's start with the fish tank. The two Fullbringers nodded as they went to the back room while a dark-skinned woman walked up to Ichigo. You and me first, kiddo. Jackie said, glaring at the young hybrid. Word of advice, you better treat this like a real fight. Because I'm not holding back. Then the other two came back with a fish tank that had eyes and a mouth like a teddy bear. This place will be your battleground. Ririka told Ichigo. You're lucky you're a hottie, otherwise this won't work. She rubs her thumb along her index finger before flicking out a small heart with the letter R on it. The heart attached itself to Ichigo's shirt. My Fullbring is called Dollhouse. Anything I like and put that pass on, I can move them freely into objects like this cute fish tank. She put her finger on the rim of the tank. I permit you. She said before Ichigo and Jackie were pulled into the fish tank. Urahara Shoten. Ishine wandered through the halls of the building that became the main base of operations for his squad, slowly transitioning from a simple shop and training center to a legitimate military barracks for Soul Reapers. Memories of helping his son train here filled him with nostalgia as some rooms were completely redone to house the new occupants that was his squad. The only person missing that would finish this base was his lieutenant by his side. Speaking of which, Captain Ishine. Lisa said, finally catching up to her new captain. He turned to greet the wizard as she delivered her report. Hiyori confirms that Ichigo has made contact with Jinjo. That was fast. Does Jinjo trust him? Ishine asked. He remembered the first substitute Soul Reaper. Seemed like a good guy at first. But then again, so did Aizen. He really didn't like using Ichigo as bait, but they had little options with this. Either ignore him, or find a way to bring him in. If there was anyone he trusted to take care of himself, it was his son. He seems to be baiting Ichigo and lying about his past. Lisa responded, adjusting her glasses. Says the last substitute Shinigami they've met tried to kill them. Almost as if what Captain Yukatake said about him was completely wrong. Jinjo was always a bad liar. Ishine said as he headed for Hiyori's station in the shop. It's easier to believe his memory is being manipulated by some means. They came into a room filled with monitors displaying rows of data, images of Karakura, and lines of text, along with a few speakers. In front of it all was Hiyori, sitting in a high back chair wearing her usual tracksuit and keeping an eye on everything. Called Dollhouse. They heard from one of the speakers. Anything I like and put that pass on, I can move them freely into objects like this cute fish tank. I permit you. Well, sounds like he's just going to get stronger. Hiyori said before an image of Urahara and Yamamoto appeared on one of the screens. You get all that? Indeed. Urahara said, his curious mind already re-evaluating what they've heard. The ability to manipulate the souls of everything around them. Even a specialty skill wholly their own. This dollhouse seems to create her own Trojan horse or a prison cell for anyone caught inside. But only subjective to her own emotions. Yamamoto said. I cannot deny Jinjo's claims about how we would have responded earlier, but as Ichigo has shown, change is upon all of us. So what now? Ishine asked the two older captains. From best to worst case scenarios, Genri Yusai started, we could recruit them for the war, turn a blind eye and they go about their lives, or they have to be put down. The statement hung in the air as Kisuke and Ishine silently prayed that the third choice never comes to pass. Skyushin, fish tank. The moment the two entered, Jackie activated her Fullbring, dirty boots and began attacking Ichigo. Since then Ichigo was on the defensive, evading her attacks and testing his Fullbring. He tossed his badge, he tried to cut with the Reishi, he threw energy glaives from his badge that had no cutting ability, it seemed like this Fullbring was solely for defense. During this time, Jackie was taunting him for his complacency. What? Did you think you hot stuff activating your Fullbring? She yelled at him as he dodged another kick. You might have been powerful as a Soul Reaper, but you're just human right now with an ability you just got. You have to fight back or you'll never master your full bring. He threw more of those projectiles from his badge that she kicked to pieces with ease. My full bring, dirty boots, makes me stronger and faster with how dirty my boots get. While you've been running, I've grown stronger. Ichigo stood in place, looking at her with an impassive gaze, like the entire situation was under his control. Giving up. No response. I expected better. She charged at him as fast as she could go, ready to deliver a devastating kick. Too slow. She heard him say as he slipped past her attack and threw his fist into her gut, stopping her instantly. Too weak. He said as he managed to use Bringer Light to deliver swift kick to her side and send her flying. You thought this was a challenge? I've played tag in my human body faster than this. You have no technique, just speed and power. He turned his focus on her again as his badge's Ryotsu started flaring wildly. I've been trained in all three so my body could handle the kind of power my soul could unleash. I'm not the cocky one here, you are. The Ryotsu from his badge soon cloaked his body and turned into a ragged, smoky form of Shinigami robes with a blade of swirling black energy extending from his hand. Now why don't you stop playing and give me a decent fight? At that moment his vision started to get fuzzy. Jackie was suddenly moving faster. He couldn't stop the harsh kick to his face that sent him flying. What the? She wondered as Ichigo seemed to be reacting slower to her movements. Kiriko must have made it so the odds are stacked against him. But what are the conditions? Outside the fish tank. So the only real method of training a full bring to its max potential is to force it out in combat? Chad asked, finally getting the chance to learn more about developing a full bring aside from the short summary that let know how it worked. Yeah, it's a simple concept but harder than you think. Jinjo said as the other full bringers were doing their things. You have to draw on the soul of the object of your full bring more and more, like finding the strength to push yourself when you think you're at your limit. He turned his gaze to the container that held Ichigo and Jackie. Putting him in a life or death fight, at least making him think it, is sometimes the best method. Over by the bar, Kiriko checked his pocket watch. And it's only going to get harder for the poor boy. Everyone turned their gazes to him as he explained. For Sato's sake, I should explain. My ability is time tells no lies. With it, I can set timers with set conditions within those time frames. The contract in the fish tank is thus, after 15 minutes if neither of them calls off the training, then Jackie will move through accelerated time, while Ichigo will go through decelerated time. Jackie will be faster, and Ichigo will be slower. It's for the best. Tsukishima said. Always fighting and training in his soul body is not the same as fighting in one of flesh and blood. They knew Ichigo had spent years training his spiritual powers but they thought he only trained in his soul body. He's only trained in his soul body twice. Chad said, making all eyes turn to him now. I only know as far back as middle school, but he's spent years training to his limits in his physical body. Their eyes widened in shock. I thought you knew. When did you start watching him? Shortly after he became a Soul Reaper. Jinjo breathed out before hurrying over to the fish tank, which was shaking violently. Just as he reached it, it exploded. Everyone was shaken as they waited for the dust to settle down. The first thing they saw was a beaten and bruised Jackie, cradled in the arms of Ichigo, now clad in a white armor covering most of his body with his badge becoming the guard of a short blade in his hands. A good portion of the armor was cracked and he had some burns on his form. I exploded. He said, letting Jinjo know that he was referring to when he completed his full bring. Something that shouldn't have been possible as anyone would have been torn apart by the power release unless another full bringer was there to control the output. The scariest part was, Jackie didn't seem to have helped him at all. It hurt. Ichigo said as he handed Jackie to Chad. Now we can end this charade. Tsukishima said, turning his bookmark into a katana and slashing the other full bringers as he moved towards Ichigo with all possible speed. Which, for any student of the Flash Goddess, was not fast enough. Ichigo watched as Tsukishima got behind him and waited till the last second to deflect the man's sword, taking his attention away from the other full bringers. He caught Tsukishima in a blade lock as Jinjo got back up from the attack. Thanks for that. He said before aiming to impale Ichigo. He thrust for Ichigo's back before a clawed white hand caught his claymore blade. Hello. A warped voice sang out as Zanjutsu materialized from behind Ichigo, staring the former substitute in the eyes. He was in the same lean, horned, form from when Ichigo fought Kenpeki. That wasn't nice. Or smart. He said before punching the backstabbing Fullbringer out of the apartment. Kyujo! Tsukishima cried out, giving Ichigo the window to sucker punch the guy and follow Jinjo out of the small space. The other Fullbringers soon followed. Ichigo and Jinjo were standing across from each other in the air, staring down their opponent. I thought you said your powers were sealed. Jinjo yelled out furiously. Tsukishima could keep the plan a secret, so he altered the memories of every Skyushin member to get Ichigo to drop his guard. You showed me your seal. Yeah. One of them. Ichigo said. I can't use those powers, but my Zanpakuto spirit could. The others, Sans Chad and Jackie, came up behind before a storm of spirit arrows flashed in front of them. They're talking. Don't be rude. Uriah said from his vantage point on the roof of the apartment. Backup's coming, Ichigo. You're really going to do this? Jinjo asked the orange-haired hybrid. You're going to condemn us all? If Soul Society finds out about us, we're all dead. That badge is a tracker and a Ryotsu controller. If you step out of line, they'll render you helpless and kill you. They'll betray you just like they did me. The first substitute Soul Reaper. The two continued to glare at each other before Ichigo spoke up. First off, Jinjo, I only said that they sealed my powers. If they didn't, my human body would have been destroyed by my Ryotsu. They didn't have to seal all of them, but they did. You wouldn't come out of hiding otherwise. He said, dispelling his Fullbring, Zanjutsu still protecting his partner. I'd still need a seal, but that's a rule regarding my rank. He pulled down his shirt to reveal two more flower seals, the Yarrow of Squad 11 and one that looks like a red spider lily. Speaking of, Hiri? He asked, speaking into his badge. Conditions are met for level 1 and 2 seal release. Hiri said from the comm link. Have fun, Baldy. Always with that stupid name. Ichigo groaned as they were getting surrounded by Soul Reapers. But whatever, I've been aching to do this. He placed his hand on his chest as the Yarrow and Higanbana flowers glowed. Limit, release. He said, bringing the badge to his chest as the seals faded. He exited his body and his Reishi flared explosively. Some of the braver Shinigami recovered Ichigo's body and began bringing it to safety. Soon his Ryotsu began to settle and reveal Ichigo with black bands on his arms, ankles, and neck, and a badge on his left arm with the Kanji 15 and the Higanbana insignia underneath it. Squad 15 Lieutenant, Ichigo Kurosaki. He said, leveling a glare at Jinjo. And you're under arrest. Chapter 32, Ichigo's first mission. Flashback 1 week, Soul Society, Squad 4 Barracks. Ichigo stared at the three captains before him in shock. He'd understand restraining his power somewhat because it was as wild as Zaraki's, but completely sealing it off? Were they shutting him out of the fight? He spent his entire life training just for the war against Waiwak, they can't just take that away. That was when Tessai pulled out a monitor and Urahara held up a pointer. You see, Ichigo, he started as an image of a human body doing various exercises came up. You're already aware of the relationship of spiritual energy and physical limits. So I'll keep this brief. He began pointing at the diagram. The spirit grows from desires, such as to survive, while the body grows from physical work. The diagram changed to a regular figure and one with flaring Ryotsu. The body serves as a container for spiritual power and grows in tandem to the spirit as both grow. Because you've trained your body so hard, you were able to release a greater amount of your Ryotsu and match several lieutenants that would normally have the advantage. Your physical body was able to contain the power. The diagram changed again to include a figure with Ryotsu that was like an inferno going into a normal body. However, after training with Zaraki like that, your Ryotsu is now going to shoot your control to hell, yet again. Like picking up a single grain of sand with a backhoe, or killing an ant with a howitzer. He pointed at the diagram. Now compare your Ryotsu to water and your physical body to a balloon. What happens when you put too much water in? He played the diagram and the figure with Ryotsu exploded. Ichigo winced at the thought of that happening to him. And so, we're back to square one with your Ryotsu control. Just when we finally taught you finesse. Except from now on, Commander Yamamoto will be training you. Ishine told his son. I see. Ichigo said as he bowed before the ancient captain. I look forward to your lessons, sensei. Yamamoto let out a snort of nostalgia, hearing a new student calling him sensei for the first time in centuries. So for now, let's apply the first two seals. Ichigo, take off your shirt. Urahara said as Ishine and Yamamoto raised a calligraphy brush with glowing white ink. Ichigo removed his shirt and stood still as the two captains drew their squad's insignias. After a brief flash of light, Ichigo felt much weaker, but not powerless. More like, when he invaded Soul Society, but saving Rukia. And that should allow you to continue on with your life while serving your station. My station? Ichigo asked, seeing his dad pull out a wooden lieutenant's badge with the number 15 and a Higanbana insignia, before handing it to him. Welcome to Squad 15, Lieutenant Kurosaki. His dad said with a grin. Ichigo looked at the badge with a sense of pride before remembering something. Wait, you said you had to completely seal my powers. Ichigo pointed out. Why, if this is enough for me to do my duties? Because there's someone we want you find. A sickly tired voice said from behind the hybrid. The first human to gain Shinigami powers, Kyujo Jinjo. Jushiro Yukatake walked into the room. He was the reason why it's a crime for a Soul Reaper to give a human their powers. Jinjo got his powers from a Soul Reaper and proved helpful to our cause as a substitute Soul Reaper. However, it was soon discovered that he killed many other Soul Reapers to steal their powers as well. We didn't start monitoring him with these until after we discovered Shinigami began to disappear. He said, holding up a small wooden amulet with a skull engraving. His greed for power made him a murderer, and when he found out we were watching him, he fled as fast as he could. According to the bug I planted on Chad, Jinjo has already met with him. Urahara said. And they know of you, Ichigo. Hence why we need to seal your powers completely. To let him think you foster hate toward Soul Society and possibly even join him. Your first mission, Lieutenant Kurosaki, is to bring in Kyujo Jinjo. Yamamoto said. We'll use the Squad 11 seal since Zaraki considers you a part of his squad. He said while they repeated the ritual. Present day, Naraki City, above Skyushin headquarters. Ichigo floated in the air, across from the power stealer that set the precedent of Soul Reaper powers to humans. Jinjo looked at Ichigo with disgust, embarrassed that he ever had hope for the hybrid. The other Fullbringers looked scared, worried about how they'll escape, though Giriko looked at his pocket watch. He had to play this to his advantage. And I thought I was a real villain. He said, keeping Ichigo's focus on him. You brought all these Shinigami here and you said you weren't followed. You said you'd help free us from our fear. And here we are, surrounded and betrayed, waiting for your execution order. I never lied once since I met you. Ichigo pointed out. I never said we weren't followed, Chad did. I said I would free you of your curse of fear, and I am. He grabbed his blade and changed it to his massive cleaver, now in the form of a trench knife with a length of chain at the hilt's base. The Fullbringers are of no concern to Soul Society. He said, making all the Fullbringers present react in shock. At the moment, they have not done anything to threaten innocent souls and seem to only threaten other Fullbringers and Soul Reapers, but you're the only one that's killed any. They are not accessories to your crimes. Cut the crap. Jinjo growled. Soul Society would never do that. The old Soul Society wouldn't, Ichigo agreed, but the threat of a looming war encourages change and development in order to prepare. Uriah and the Fullbringers. Is that true? Ryrika asked as they were brought before the Quincy. Soul Society won't come after us. She was hopeful, while most of the other Fullbringers were held at sword point by the various Soul Reapers around them. Yukio and Giriko were separated from their respective Fullbrings after a quick observation from Uriah made him guess what they were. There are two wars coming for Soul Society that will threaten the worlds of the living and the dead. Both are considered enough of a threat that Soul Society is willing to change thousands of years of laws and customs. Urayu explained while a couple of Shinigami helped Chad and Jackie up on the building. Third seat Ishida. These two are injured. One of the Soul Reapers said. What should we do? Heal them both, Urayu quickly commanded. That man is going to be our squad's fourth seat soldier. They nodded at their orders and began applying healing Kido. So yeah, you're only being held captive because we don't want you getting involved. That Tsukishima guy managed to slip through, but we'd rather avoid senseless killing. So when everything's done, you can run along and live your lives. What are our other options? Kiriko boldly asked, feeling a Zanpakuto press against his throat a little harder. You keep causing trouble and I'll kill you. Urayu said without hesitation, summoning up a solid black bow. Or you join us, get access to the capabilities of Soul Society and possibly improve your abilities or find more of your kind. You have a few doors open to you. He said before turning back to Ichigo. Jinjo has two. Go with Ichigo willingly, or the hard way. Ichigo vs Jinjo. So yeah, Ichigo said after giving a similar explanation Urayu gave, they're free to go. You have to pay for your crimes. The former substitute glared at the one he thought would be a victim of Soul Society's lies. You can either come along willingly, or we do this the hard way. How can you be so willing to side with them? Jinjo growled, sparing a glance at Tsukishima to make sure he was ready to move. I sided with them and they betrayed me. I will repeat this. Jinjo Kyujo, you are under arrest for the murder of several Shinigami and the theft of their powers. Ichigo stated. Normally Soul Society would be absurd and draconian in their laws, but this is where I side with them. You've murdered and stole lives and powers. What world do you live in that you think you wouldn't be watched? He leveled his blade at Jinjo. Now are we going to do this the easy way, or the hard way? Jinjo scoffed. What makes you think you can beat Dash? He started before Ichigo appeared right in front of him and dug a clawed hand around Jinjo's heart. This for starters. Ichigo said, his left hand coated in his hollow armor, wiggling his fingers and lightly brushing against Jinjo's beating heart. Tsukishima acted as fast as he could when the reality of what he saw caught up to him. He charged to Ichigo's back, preparing to cut through the hybrid. Ichigo sensed the killing intent and dodged each strike, finally flipping Jinjo around and kicking him into Tsukishima while pulling his claws out of the renegade in the process. This will not end well for you. Is he really worth your life? I owe him my life. Tsukishima said as the Fullbringers prepared for the next bout. Ichigo let out a saddened sigh. I really don't want to do this. Ichigo muttered before raising his free hand, summoning a small black and red bow. I'll try to make this painless. He said before several rapid shots at the two, causing them to separate. He flash-stepped behind Tsukishima, who turned to try to slash at the hybrid. Ichigo blocked and placed his index finger on top of his opponent's heart. Ichigo's memories flashed to a lesson about how strength and application were important to Kido spells. Heido number 1, show. He whispered as he sent a kinetic pulse through the Fullbringer's chest. The man's eyes widened as he felt his heart pause. Ichigo charged a zero at the tip of his blade and pointed it at Jinjo, who was charging with energy flaring from his sword. Ichigo fired at Jinjo, who struggled against the torrent of energy. The blast ended and Ichigo threw the dying Tsukishima and the former Soul Reaper. Damn it! Kyujo cursed as he tried to resuscitate his ally. How did he get so strong? Tsukishima gasped as Jinjo's pounding managed to restart his friend's heart. He won't beat me. He growled as he heard a familiar incantation. With light, divide this into 6. Bakudo number 61, Rikuya Koro. Ichigo chanted from above the Fullbringers, trapping them together in the paralyzing spell. There, that should do it. Ichigo said as he walked away from the struggling Fullbringers. Take them to the Shoten and prepare to transfer them to Soul Society. The more focused Soul Reapers proceeded with their orders, while some of the younger ones annoyed Urayu. Lieutenant Kurosaki is so cool. The guy restraining Ririka said. He's not that great. She mumbled while blushing. You're totally crushing on him, Tsundere. Yukio said, making the magenta girl glare at the other Fullbringer. He might want to watch his back. Kiriko said as Tsukishima and Jinjo broke out of the Kido spell and charged at Ichigo. He charged his power and swung a massive Getsuga Tensho at the charging duo. Never mind, he said in awe of the raw power, watching the outline of his two former comrades fade into nothingness. Scratch that, Ichigo called out. Send a message to Captain Love and the 14th Division, give them a description of the two. He sheathed his weapon and joined Uri and the remaining members of Skyushin. What's their call? I've got a company to run, so I'll bail, Yukio said as the Shinigami released them. I would however be willing to make a few business deals if they interest me. I think I want to join you, Ririka said, looking away from Ichigo. I've always been selfish with my powers, but if I can help you guys with your war. She faced Ichigo with full confidence and stars in her eyes, then I can get access to even more cute things to love, she proudly announced, making everyone else sweat drop at her declaration. Ichigo merely shrugged. Yes, well, I think I'll join as well, Kiriko stated. Merely because this seems interesting. Very well, Ichigo said. Take Yukio to a bus stop and let him return to his company. Everyone else, back to the Shoten. I need to head home, Ichigo said as he grabbed his body and flash-stepped away. Kurosaki household. Ichigo made his way back inside his house, silent and melancholic. The thoughts of his actions with Tsukishima and Jinjo kept replaying in his mind. He fought to restrain them, take them in alive, then he just wiped them both out with ease. Killing the two of them was like swatting a fly, and he just barely kept everything together as he made his way home to report to his father and captain. He opened up the door to see his family, already sitting around the table, enjoying a dinner. Unii-chan. Come on, Yuzo called out. Mom and I made dinner. It's really good. Ichigo smiled just slightly before heading upstairs. I'm not hungry. I'm going to bed early, he said as he began to ascend the stairs. Mission accomplished, Dad. Jinjo was sent to Soul Society, he called before entering his room. It's not healthy to skip dinner, Yuzo said, pouting. Masaki and Ishine spared a glance of silent conversation, guessing what's happened. Stop, Yuzo, Ishine ordered as Yuzo got up. Leave your brother alone for now. Let Mom and Dad handle this. Yes, Masaki said, petting her daughter's head. You can just leave this to the parents. There's just some things that we need to do. Yuzo gave in, but still made a plate of leftovers for her brother. A few hours passed by before Ishine made his way into Ichigo's room. He found his son, lying on the bed shaking. Hey son, he said softly, with Ichigo's back to him. I heard the report from one of the squad members. Looks like Jinjo wanted to do things the hard way. Masaka came in silently, watching the exchange between her husband and son. Ichigo, tell me how it feels. How it feels, Ichigo said through shaky breath. Dad, I just killed 2 people. I was barely able to function through the shock of the experience. It was easy. He turned to face his father. I could have bound them better, used a stronger spell, and I killed them like I was stepping on an ant. He snapped, grasping at his head. I thought, what's happening to me? He started screaming before Ichigo felt himself get wrapped in a warm embrace as his parents held him. Ichigo, we never wanted you to be a killer, Ishine told his son. We trained you to be able to stop anything, and you did. You stopped yourself and your team from getting hurt. You managed to rescue and give most of the Fullbringers a chance they can use to better their lives. You did what you've always done, you protected. And if it ever gets too hard, just come home, Masaka said, stroking her child's hair. We'll always have a place for you with us. So just let it out if you need to. Ichigo felt his arms weakly wrap around his parents. There's no need to hold back in front of us. Once again, Ichigo was reduced to a crying child in his mother's embrace. Remember this feeling, Ichigo, Ishine said. Remember the pain of taking a life. Pray that it never turns into a pleasure, that is when you've lost who you are. Ichigo swore that he would never forget that feeling for as long as he existed. Soul Society, Shiba household. They waited another week for Ichigo to recover from his first mission, and first kills. Chad recovered and joined as the fourth seat of the squad, with Tatsuki as the fifth and Orium as the sixth. They received a report from Ganja that, after a few days, they've managed to find Jinjo's and Tsukishima's souls in the Rukon districts and have already transported them to the Maggot's nest. They can be released, but only when they were willing to cooperate. The Fullbringers that have joined Soul Society went to the R&D department under the supervision of Kisuke Urahara, already testing the true capacity of the Fullbring abilities, beginning with seeing if Chad's coin medallion was a Fullbring. Tatsuki made her way to 2nd Division Barracks to get some training in with Swafon and Yoryuki. Orium headed for the 4th to learn some more medical skills from Anohana. Uryu had the weirdest encounter though. Just as they came out of the Senkaimon to head for the Shiba house, the former lieutenant of the 12th squad, Nimyo Kuratsuke, was waiting, in a light blue sundress. "Hello Uryu," she said, walking up to the Quincy 3rd seat. "Come with me. We're having a date." She then grabbed his hand and starting pulling him away. "Wait, what? What's happening?" Uryu tried to yell as Nimyo dragged him away. "I did not agree to this." He continued to protest as he faded from sight. "Okay, shall we go?" Ichigo asked his family, already heading for the Shiba house. "Shouldn't we be worried about Uryu nii?" Karen asked as the rest of the started walking away. "You'll love them mom." Yuzo cheered. "They're all as upbeat and funny as dad." "They sound like a lot of fun Yuzo," Masaka said with a smile. "Yeah. Kurosaka family trip." Ishine yelled out unashamed in his Hayori. Karen just shrugged and joined them. The few days of the presence of the 14th Division showed at a level of economic expansion in the West Rukon district. Houses were repaired, more stores and vendors, better dressed citizens. Plenty of people were still wary of Soul Reapers, but the Kurosaka family were welcomed as honored guests. Before long they made it back to the Shiba house, showing a greater level of wealth as the main economic center for most of West Rukon. "So this is that wonderful wife, Masaki? Kyokaku asked as she looked over the Quincy. "I like her. Welcome to the family Masaki Oba-san." She smiled as she patted the woman on the shoulder. "Speaking of family, hey Ichigo." The clan head called out to the hybrid. "You talked to Byakuya yet?" "Not yet." Ichigo answered. "Why? Is it important?" "I should hope so," Kyokaku responded, "it's your marriage after all." Everyone froze. "You really should have talked to him." Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Who's in control? Alternate version of the meeting in Prelude to Change. Night had fallen, most of the Soul Society was asleep now, resting and recovering from the events from earlier that day. All but the unlucky groups pulling night patrols, the captains that would determine the future of the coming war, and the hybrid that seemed to be at the center of all of it. They all stood in attendance, the captains flanking down both sides, with Genri Yusai at the head and Ichigo in the center. "There are many questions to ask Ichigo," Yamamoto started. "But very little time to get any answers. So for now, only the necessary ones. Are you in complete control?" Ichigo blinked a couple times. "I don't know." He turned to the side as a lean, pale figure with a skull mask and long sharp horns appeared next to him. "Hey Zanjitsu, am I in control?" "Why the hell are you asking me?" he asked deadpan as most of the assembled captains started freaking out. Zaraki was excited, Swafon looked like she was having a heart attack, Kiraku and Yukatake were laughing at someone joking with their old master, and Mayuri looked like he creamed himself. "I'm too old for this," Yamamoto thought tiredly. "Ririka at the R&D. You seem to have severe myopia," Urahara said, scanning her eyes. "Shouldn't you wear glasses or contacts?" "Glasses aren't cute and contacts dry my eyes out." Ririka scoffed. Urahara merely shrugged at the inconvenience. "Next option." He turned to his lieutenant, who was busy looking at Ichigo's severed limb under a microscope. "Mayuri. Where do we keep the spare eyes?" he yelled, making Ririka jump. "Third storage closet labeled replacement organs." Mayuri responded quickly. "The good eyes. Fifth closet labeled freshly grown. Any preferences to Kugamine-san?" Ryrika looked at him like he was insane before trying to throw him off. How about pink ones that get heart-shaped pupils when I'm happy? She said with a snarky attitude. Give me a minute. Mayuri said as he got up. I'll wear glasses. She screamed when she saw Urahara hold up a scalpel. Chapter 33, Union of Kukaki and Shiba. Shiba House. Reactions among the Kurosaka family were varied, to say the least. Kyokaku just announced that whatever she was talking to Byakuya about involved Ichigo's betrothal. The three siblings were shocked to hear the news. Masaka was furious, and Ishine, you were supposed to raise him as a man amongst men, was currently being choked to death by his loving wife. Now you're marrying him off like a prized stud? He already has 2 girlfriends, Ishine, now he's getting married? What did you do to my baby boy, you dash? Ichigo turned away from his mom's unusual aggression to focus on the Shiba clan head, while his sisters clung to him possessively. Okay, so I'm being married off to the Kukaki clan? Ichigo asked. Why wasn't I informed? I told you to talk to Kukaki for the details, Ichigo. She said in her usual nonchalance. If it was my idea, I would have told you and gotten your input. She suddenly turned serious as he lit up her pipe. But it wasn't my idea. It was Byakuya's. This surprised Ichigo, considering the last time he saw the man in question, he was being glared at. In short, Kukaki feels a debt to you for saving Rukia, so he wanted to unite the 2 clans as a way of establishing a permanent alliance between the Kukaki and the Shiba. Namely, your marriage to Rukia Kukaki. The background quieted down as the others in the room reflected on the weight of this action. The Shiba family is on the rise as the main economic powerhouse in the West Rukon, and we've already begun to expand our reach to the other districts. Sure, this marriage might damage those relations somewhat, with the distaste between the nobles and the Rukon citizens, but that will fade as life continues to improve in the Rukon. But why me and Rukia? Ichigo asked, only to be answered with a loud snort from Kyokaku. You think I'm going to leave something like this to Ganju? She asked through chuckles. Ichigo, you're the one that has bested some of Seoul society's strongest. You are the first student that Yamamoto personally took on in the last 1,000 years, and the only reason you are not a captain yet is that you are literally a child at 15 and have nowhere near the experience people like your father have. When Byakuya proposed the union of the clans, the elders practically begged that you were the one to Wednesday. She leaned back in relaxation. Now we're thinking of a month or 2 to plan the wedding, so don't go getting your little snow bunny pregnant, you horn dog. She said, taking a long puff of her pipe. Ichigo felt a cold chill as he could swear his mother was glaring at him. We only just kissed at the fireworks festival, Kyokaku. He said, shocked that they were spied on. Kyokaku seemed genuinely surprised. Really? Considering what Yoriyuki told me, I thought you already planted some seeds in that petite girl. She said, adding fuel to the rage fire of Masaki. After all, you made me see stars. Ichigo started sweating bullets as he felt a cold hand wrap around his shoulder. Ichigo. He heard his mother sing in the most blood-chilling tone. What is she talking about? Ichigo used all the speed skills he had at his disposal, creating speed clones and cratering every place he landed at, as he ran for his life. Flashback, Rukon District. Damn it! Jinjo cursed as he dodged another Shinigami patrol. How did he have so much power? It's been 3 days since Ichigo killed them and, true to his word, this was the hard way. They managed to escape notice into the Rukon district, which was soon swarming with Shinigami and a couple of captains, with Jinjo and Tsukishima both in no condition to fight. Whatever was in that attack Ichigo used, it left them nearly crippled when they entered the Rukon districts. Tsukishima could barely walk, and since they had a lot of Ryutsu, they had to keep a constant focus on keeping their Reishi unnoticeable. He was coming back from a risky grab of some food when the Soul Reaper patrols got thicker. Maybe I should have taken his offer. He contemplated as he slowly made his way back to his lone ally. For the first time in a long while, his thoughts drifted back to the one captain that made him figure out the truth of his badge. Jinjo. Tsukishima said as his mentor and friend came into their ramshackle hut on the edge of the 5th district of West Rukon. Is everything alright? He groaned as pain coursed through him. They still felt the burns of Ichigo's attack, consuming their bodies as they turned to ash. His shaking hand took some bread from Kyujo's hand as the two ate. "The patrols are getting thicker," he said in between bites. "If we want to avoid capture, we should head deeper into the lower districts. A trip you might not make," he thought as he re-evaluated his options. If Ichigo was telling the truth, and from the whispers he's heard among the patrolling Soul Reapers he was, then Soul Society was not looking to imprison him, just keep him on a short leash. Which, in retrospect, he did kind of deserve. There were 3 traitor captains that left. Ichigo said that there was a war coming, and Soul Society was changing. When he was still a substitute Shinigami, he saw Soul Reapers bully the people of the Rukon, extort protection money, treat the people like dirt. Now, he saw a Shinigami give kids pointers on harnessing their riot suit, actually help people, an almost complete change from what he used to know. So they could either keep running and stay in danger, or they could turn themselves in and hope for a favorable sentence. "I never should have listened to that damned Aizen," Jinjo growled, remembering when the former captain of the 5th Division told him about the Soul Reaper badge. "Yeah, he's ruined everyone's lives." They heard a gruff tone from their doorway. They turned to see a thuggish man with a bandana, a short cleaver on his back, and armbands with rough strips like those to light fuses. "My cousin swore to crush him personally. You might know him. He sent you both here after all." Jinjo and Tsukishima immediately summoned their blades and prepared to fight. "Whoa. I'm not here to fight," the Shinigami said as he brought his arms up to placate the two. "I'm here to distract you," he said before they both felt a strong blow to their necks. They dropped like rag dolls, with Jinjo barely holding on to consciousness. "Nice job, Lieutenant Amagai. Well, I was a member of the Onmitsukido before transferring Ganju," Jinjo heard as he finally blacked out. Present day, Maggot's Nest. Time had passed for the Fullbringers from when they were finally captured. They were sent to the 4th Division to recover from their injuries and then directly to the Maggot's Nest after their Fullbring objects were taken from them. They only had their Bringer Light ability left to them in order to fight off the other inmates. Tsukishima was waiting for Jinjo to come up with their next plan of action, while Jinjo was waiting for a visit from the only captain he was expecting to see. He waited for 3 more days before he finally saw the man that first gave him the substitute badge. Jushiro Yukitake, who was with Urahara, carrying a display stand, and Ririka, who was carrying a dollhouse and wearing sunglasses, for some reason. The white-haired captain quickly found Kyujo and made his way over while Urahara made an announcement. "All right, people," he loudly announced. "Some of you were imprisoned wrongly because you were perceived as a threat before actually doing anything. This was a failed system as a few people that were threats managed to evade capture and eventually escaped before they could be stopped. So we now offer a chance," he said, gesturing to Ririka who set up her dollhouse. "You will be put into this little house and evaluated. Depending on what is found, you will be released back into Soul Society to either rejoin the Godei or be citizens of the Rukanga. The only rules when you go inside are as follows: no fighting, no lying, and you have only 5 minutes to answer all the questions." Jinjo's eyes widened as he figured out what was going to happen. "You should follow them," he warned. "If you don't, well, you won't like the results." He then turned his attention to Yukitake as a hesitant line of inmates was formed in front of Ririka. "Now what do you want, Yukitake?" "It's been a while, Jinjo," the sickly man said. "I wish it was under better circumstances, but that was just wishful thinking, wasn't it?" He sat down, gesturing the 2 Fullbringers to join him. Tsukishima was reluctant, but Jinjo knew there was little left to lose. "As you've both heard, there is war coming for us. We were looking to recruit you, but we couldn't overlook your crimes or the hostility you would meet us with. You wouldn't have trusted us if we extended an open hand, so we went with the fist instead," Yukitake explained as the first inmate went into Ririka's dollhouse. He was ejected seconds later, coated in green flames, his screams of agony and terror filling the underground prison. "I warned you," Jinjo yelled out before refocusing on the man he once trusted. "So you sent that kid to draw me out and arrest me? How did you know he was strong enough to overpower anyone? How was he made a lieutenant anyway? We figured he was the best chance to get you to listen, We didn't expect you to try and turn on him. Yukatake explained as the next inmate hesitantly entered the dollhouse. As for his power, well, he fought Kenpei's Araki to a standstill for an entire day and was trained by some of the strongest and most skilled masters in our arts of combat. He's merely powerful, but greatly inexperienced. Killing you and your friend almost broke him. That was still just 60% of his power, he said, shocking both Fullbringers. We have great concerns about him, but he is our best chance to stop both Aizen and Waiwak. Waiwak? Jinjo asked, never having heard of the Quincy King. Okay, what don't I know? Ichigo is a hybrid of Hollow, Quincy, and Shinigami. Aizen revealed himself as a power-hungry man bent on becoming a god, and the ancient enemy of all Soul Reapers is returning and could very likely destroy everything as we know it. He summarized for the two Fullbringers. Aizen isn't too much of a threat as he failed to get the object he wanted to further his goals, but he is putting us all on edge, while Waiwak is a genuine threat that prompted Yamamoto to take command of the law and change it. Jinjo let everything sink in. The thought of the stubborn captain often referred to as Old Man Genocide was willing to change things, then the situation was more serious than he thought. What if we decide to join you? Tsukishima asked. He saw the expression on Jinjo's face and knew he was considering the option of joining them. You'll be released from the maggot's nest and put under strict observation and probation while carrying out your duties as Soul Reapers and finding more Fullbringers. Yukatake told them. The usual Shinigami badge and another seal that will activate when you try to attack another Shinigami without permission. That last part surprised the duo. We aren't naive enough to believe that there won't be any more rebellious soldiers. This recruitment here in the maggot's nest is to weed out those that would cause problems later while the others join us to bolster our forces. He finished as another guy burst into flames. So Giriko's in that dollhouse? Tsukishima guessed, recognizing the flames of time. He asks the questions to see if they can be trusted. Yes. A remarkable ability for interrogations. Yukatake said, looking back at the dollhouse and his fellow captain. If this Waiwak is as dangerous as you said, then the best bet is for us to swallow our pride and rejoin the squads. Jinjo admitted. But I want a piece of the bastard Aizen. He told me about the substitute badge in the first place. Did he also tell you that we were ready to pull the trigger on you at any moment? Yukatake asked, prompting the former substitute to nod. He was admittedly right, but we were hoping enough time would pass that we would hold you on trial instead of execution. Yukatake stood up as he finished talking. I don't expect you to make a decision so soon, so we'll leave you to your thoughts for now. He said as Urahara finished up his task. Only 5 out of the 200 people in line were permitted to join, and 100 people were consumed by the fires of time. By the way, why is Ririka wearing sunglasses? Tsukishima asked. Yukatake let out a tired sigh. She made the mistake of challenging our smartest minds. He said sadly. She's still wearing bandages from the surgery. Jinjo? Tsukishima? Is that you guys? Ririka asked as she looked around. I can't see too well right now. The two that knew Mayuri and Urahara let out an sympathetic sigh for the poor girl. Kukaki compound. I'm glad you've come to talk Ichigo Kurosaki. Byakuya said in his usual formal tone. This is not a matter to be taken lightly and Kyokakushiba had made it clear that I should explain matters to you. But I hope you forgive my lack of tact when I say this. He looked up into the tree the hybrid in question was currently hiding in. What the hell are you doing? Hiding from my mom. Ichigo said, still clinging to the trunk of the tree as if his life depended on it. Is this about the political marriage of the clans or your promiscuity? He asked, already knowing about those details of his love life. Both. Ichigo replied. She's been in a coma for 6 years and found out that her baby boy isn't that anymore. Byakuya only nodded. Believe it or not, I can sympathize with you on that. He said, crossing his arms. But I refuse to talk to you like this, so get down from there. Ichigo didn't move. I promise you will not have to deal with her until you have to go home. Ichigo still stayed up there. Do it or I'll tell her where you are. He said, finally prompting the boy to come down. Fine. Ichigo grumbled as he and Byakuya headed back for the manor. What's up with this marriage anyway, Byakuya? I thought you wanted me as far away from Rukia as possible. The noble head sent a sideways glare to the young lieutenant. Make no mistake, I'm not happy about you marrying Rukia, he said as they entered the manor with a maid setting out tea for the two. But I do accept this union. You've saved Rukia's life, served as the catalyst for Soul Society to change for the better, and act as the shining light for the future of Soul Society. You helped me keep my promise to my late wife and made me rethink my vow to my parents. I owe you a debt that I can never repay, so I will always do what I can to aid you. As such, establishing a permanent alliance to your Shiba family with this marriage. He took his tea and drank from it gingerly. Though I do have some concerns about the other women in your life, so I want you to do this. He put down his tea and looked at Ichigo with grave seriousness. Rukia is your first unofficial wife. The comment hung in the air as Ichigo blinked in confusion. First, official? Ichigo slowly asked. Yes. Your first unofficial wife. Byakuya said, slowly elaborating his point. Nobles are subject to different expectations than with commoners. Among which is ensuring the continued bloodline of the clan. As much as I am loath to do so and betray Hisuna, I am expected to sire a child to continue the Kukaki bloodline. The same goes for you as well, Ichigo Shiba. He said, using Ichigo's paternal family name to remind him of his noble status. Because my family is well off, I'm expected to have a single heir to the clan at least, while the Shiba family has been rather unlucky, as you've seen for yourself. As a shining star of the family, the responsibility falls on you and your family to restore your clan. Nobles have been noted to have multiple wives and concubines, so I can honestly accept you having more lovers than my sister. But I don't have to be happy about it. Huh. Was all Ichigo could say as he absorbed the information. Certainly better than what Yuriuki explained to him before at the hot springs. I'm not interested in creating a harem, Byakuya, but the way you put it makes me feel like I don't have a choice. Didn't Yuriuki say you had the instinct to breed? Byakuya asked, subtlety jabbing at Ichigo's love life. I have faith in you. You'll treat Rukia right, my brother. He said before grabbing his sword. But if you hurt Rukia in any way, I will see you punished. Duly noted. Ichigo said as he sweat dropped. Tea shop in the middle of Sirei. Rukia let out a sigh of exhaustion, doing what she could to enjoy her time away from her squad. Ever since the truth came out and she began to recover her powers, Yokotake immediately began training her to fill up the long-standing vacancy of Lieutenant of Squad 13. He explained that it was Byakuya's wish that she not get put into any unnecessary danger, but the coming war changed a lot of minds as they focused on preparations. She thought she was ready, but the sickly gentleman that she called her captain had made no secrets on what she should expect. Mostly paperwork, occasional higher-tier missions, but the worst was dealing with the duo third seats and their stupid rivalry. To make matters worse, she recently learned that she was to wed Ichigo as a way of creating a permanent alliance between her family and his. They barely started dating and she had to spend most of a week convincing her brother to not castrate Ichigo because she wasn't pregnant. In short, the Snow Maiden Soul Reaper needed a break. Rukia. She heard a familiar cry as Orium and Tatsuki were coming to join her. Just the relaxation she needed as she waved back gratefully. Then Orium's tone went colder than her Zapakuto. What's this we hear about you marrying Ichigo? Rukia started shaking as the two girls let out burning and cold anger toward the petite girl. Yes, we'd like to know. Tatsuki semi-growled as she glared at the object of their anger. Rukia felt herself shrink as the image of two hungry predators staring down a defenseless rabbit entered her mind. Well. The thing is. Rukia stuttered as fear and nervousness gripped her heart. Thankfully for her, someone came in to alleviate the tension. Now you two. Rangiku sang as she came up behind the empowered humans, putting a calming hand on their shoulders. She can't talk if you keep scaring her like that. Orium and Tatsuki looked at each other before calming down. There we go. Name's Rangiku Matsumoto, Lieutenant of Squad 10. Now how about we talk over dumplings? She suggested with a cheery smile. The next thing they knew, they were all drinking tea and eating dumplings in a completely calm and relaxed atmosphere. Much better. Rangiku said, successfully defusing the situation. Now then Rukia, can you explain? She said, not in a teasing tone but one of seriousness that was rare for the lieutenant. Right. Rukia said as she filled in the others on the political side of the situation they found themselves in. I'm not entirely against marrying him, but this early just feels off. It's just establishing a union between the two, right? Tatsuki asked. You can hold it off for a while as you get to know each other better. That should also give us a chance to bond as well. Orium said, relieved that she and Tatsuki might still get married to their favorite strawberry. Sister wives. She cheered, throwing a hand up and prompting the others to join. Sister wives. Rangiku cheered, waiting a few seconds for that to sink in for the others. Once it had, she pulled out the letter Jin left for Ichigo. He's keeping a promise to him. And he seems like a nice guy. She said with a smile, remembering the night they spent together. The three girls took a small recess to talk amongst themselves. All right Rangiku. Tatsuki said, being the spokesperson for the ground. You may pursue Ichigo. But nothing perverted. She said, laying down the law. If you really want to try this, you have to be willing to give him your heart. Only then will we permit you to make love with him. I'll know if you break this rule. Orium sternly said. She's not joking. One time she sniffed out Ichigo before anyone saw him. Tatsuki said as Orium barked like a dog. Ah. Rangiku pouted. And he's got such a nice body too. But fine, you were first and I'm only now joining. She said before sticking her hand in. Sisters. The other three looked at each other before nodding. Sisters. They said, joining their hands. Then Orium and Tatsuki gained some mischievous smirks. Now for that. Tatsuki said with a creepy chuckle. Yes. Time for them to meet Masaki Oka-chan. Orium said with a similar giggle, putting the two Soul Reapers on edge. Squad 12 R&D Department. Jackie ran as hard as she could through the obstacle course in the labs of the 12th Division, scanners and measuring devices on her body as she powered through with her full bring. She hasn't picked a squad to join as of yet, electing to be the prime research specimen for their work into the powers of full bring. She wanted to get stronger, she hated her own powers, she was torn. The other full bringers wanted to enhance their abilities, but she wanted to get rid of them. It didn't matter if it let her get her revenge for her family when they were murdered, they were a constant reminder of finding her family dead, their blood dirtying her boots and awakening her full bring. That's good for now Tristan-san. Take the rest of the day off. A voice said from the intercom, letting Jackie relax. They said they could possibly change her abilities, or at the very least, remove them. She simply had to help with their research, which she did unhesitatingly. The idea of ridding herself of her bleak reminders overriding every other thought. It was these few breaks that made her think. You have no technique, just speed and power. His voice echoed in her head. I'm not the cocky one here, you are. He played her with ease when they first started, then Giriko's timer kicked in and gave her an advantage. She immediately capitalized on her increased time to crush him, to prove him wrong, but his words did their damage. She never had the kind of fight he must have had to let him make that boast. He soon adapted to the situation and returned the favor. I love my power. He said, explaining why she lost to him so easily. It lets me protect my friends, the people I care about. I've never seen it as a curse. I give myself to my powers, and I learn from them. This was like training with my Quincy abilities, but using the focus of my hollow. They speak to me, guide me, and I trust them with my life. He mastered Bring Her Light in the middle of that fight, allowing him to keep up with and surpass her as he pushed his senses to their limit to trace and follow her. Someone that hates their own abilities, could never match me. He growled as his full bring evolved before her eyes, leading to the explosion that preceded a completed full bring. Damn kid. She cursed as his words echoed her own greatest weakness. She hated her full bring for that constant reminder of what she lost. It wasn't fair. Why did she have to be the one to hate her powers? Everyone else lived with or relished their abilities, but she had the constant reminder of loss on her feet. Even if she did lose them, what then? Where would she go? She was brought out of her musing when a flash of light caught her eye. El Directo! Chad roared as he fired another blast. Another lucky bastard, with a full bring born from his desire to help his friends. His session ended and he made his way out to find Urayu, not exactly trusting the daughter of Mayuri. He passed Jackie as she made her opinion heard. "You lucky bastards," she said, getting Chad's attention. "Why do you get the full brings that come from something positive? You and that brat Ichigo." Chad was about to say something, but she was ranting. "You're lucky you have good memories with your full bring. Must make it so easy to use." Chad just bopped her on the head to shut her up. "How did you awaken your full bring, Jackie?" he asked, making the older woman look at him in surprise. "My powers came to me after I refused to abandon Ichigo when a hollow showed up during our spar. I pull on the promise we made to each other," he explained before holding up his grandfather's coin. "I'm pulling on my gratefulness to my abuelo to see if this will be a full bring." "What do you pull on to harness your full bring?" he asked again. "The anger and sorrow I felt when finding my family dead," she said slowly, grimacing at the dark memories. "We were really poor and these boots were their present to me. Most likely stolen, but I didn't care. I did my best to take care of them every day. The first things that really made them dirty, and activated my full bring, was my brother's blood when I found everyone murdered." She held herself as she felt like that little girl, walking in on the bloodied scene, all over again. She stopped shaking when she felt Chad's arms wrap around her. "So you have one bad memory and you used that to power your full bring," Chad said, analyzing what he heard. "But didn't you just say you also have good memories with those boots? Why don't you use that?" he offered before letting her go and walking away. "I have something I need to do, so try what I said." She pondered on his words before her mind went back to the joy she felt when she first got her boots. She never noticed them beginning to shine a little brighter. Shiba household. Ichigo made his way back into the Shiba house after a long day, which became eerily quiet. The first time that the home had not felt inviting. He made his way around slowly before being grabbed from behind. A rough hand sealed his mouth as his hind held his son tight. "Ichigo," his father whispered into his ear, "don't make a sound. Just run. Head for any of the other bases. Hide out at Division 12 even, it's safer than here." He looked around for a second. "On my mark, just bolt. She's still dash. Where do you two think you're going?" A melodious tone of pain sang to the two Kurosaka men. They slowly turned around to see Masaka's smiling face, surrounded by a black aura that made her hair seem like it was on fire. In her hand was a wooden spoon she held like a blade. "Come on, Ichigo. Why don't you tell me about what you've been doing over dinner?" "And Ishine, what's this about 5 daughters?" Ichigo and Ishine broke out into a cold sweat. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Why Nimue took Urayu on a date. "This is very impressive, Mayuri," Urahara said in surprise, looking over Nimue's data. Mayuri was currently being held down by a high-level Bakudo spell as Urahara familiarized himself with all the data. If she actually achieves evolution, it actually beat out the Hogyaku by actually being useful. He turned to his lieutenant. "If I may offer some advice, why not let her try to fall in love?" "Love?" Mayuri stopped struggling. "Why should I care about such an unreasonable variable? Love tends to push people beyond what anyone thinks possible," Urahara said with a shrug as he dispelled his restraint spell. "Just food for thought. I think she might respond well to Urayu." He left, leaving Mayuri to ponder his words. An hour later. "All right, you have the dress that the Quincy made," Mayuri said while his daughter stood by his side, awaiting further orders. "There's a picnic set up on a hillside that Kuraka recommended. Here's your chloroform if the tranquilizers in the food don't work." He handed her a bottle and a rag. "And be sure to bring him back here." "Yes, Master Mayuri," she said with a nod. Kenpaku's bachelor party. The scarred captain of the 11th Division picked his companions carefully. He had Ikeku and Yumichika, Tetsuzumon, Renji, and Hisagi were literally dragged along. Kiraku brought the liquor, and plenty of it, and most importantly, Ichigo and Uryu. They made their way to the most desolate reaches of the living world with special permission to have their limits released. Booze. Kenpei called out. Kiraku gestured to the pyramid of sake jugs behind him. Scoreboard. Hisagi pulled out a blackboard with most of their names on it. Entertainment. Uryu pulled out some hollow bait and broke it, summoning swarms of hollows, with several Minos Grande coming along. Music. Kenpei snarled with a bloodthirsty smile. Kiraku pulled out a stereo and started playing the song of choice. Wait for it, he said, letting the music play while unleashing no Zerashi. His fellows following suit aside from Uryu and Kiraku, who chose to keep score. Go. He yelled as "Get Ready to Die" started blaring. I'm not sure what I was expecting when he invited me to come along, Uryu said as he started chalking up points. Masaka's lessons Orium and Tatsuki. Now remember what I taught you, the Kurosaka matriarch said as her son's girlfriend stood in front of her. They turned and put the lesson to the test. Welcome home, honey, Orium sang out, wearing naught but panties and an apron. Would you like dinner, a bath, or me? Tatsuki stuttered, wearing a similar outfit. They both paused as Ichigo watched them in shock. Not what he was expecting when he came home. I said, be seductive, not cute or nervous. Masaka scolded her prospective daughters as they blushed in front of their boyfriend. You have to take the reins sometimes for your man. Now do it again. Ichigo, come back in, she ordered before Ichigo got out of the house. That was odd, Uryu said, accompanying his cousin to his home. Yeah, mind if I crash at your place for now? Chapter 34, Past Pains and Coming Change. Flashback, Kenpei's party. Thousands of warped howls echoed through the air as massive hollows cried out in primal instinct. A second later, they were swept away by a massive beam. For every one slain, there was another 10 after. Spinning blades flew toward their marks and tore a Jillian asunder, while a segmented whip blade slashed down several other of the empty husks. An elephant-like beast roared in anger as 3 figures with a spear, a scimitar, and a multi-blade sickle cut it to pieces. Man! Ikeku yelled as the body of the slain Ajichas faded. This is one hell of a party. It does serve as good training. I'm glad you dragged me here, Hisagi responded as he and Renji joined him, Tetsuzumon, and Yumichika. But do those two ever slow down? They turned to see the Blood Knight captain cutting through entire groups of hollows of all sizes with the sheer force of him swinging his axe. The hybrid was doing much the same with pure Reishi attacks covering the barren wasteland with explosions. The thousands of hollows falling like sheets of wet paper. That's what makes Captain Zaraki so great, Ikeku said in excitement and admiration. The man who loves battle so much, his corpse would keep fighting long after death. Now he found the one person to keep up with him. A perfect hybrid with instant regeneration. Don't sell yourself short, Hisagi, Yumichika told the lieutenant, trying to lift his spirits. That's a pretty impressive Zanpakuto. Hisagi lifted one of his large dual-sided Kusarigama blades. Thanks, but I just don't like it, he said, looking over his blade. It looks like it's solely meant to kill. He continued to give his blade a pensive, brooding stare, unaware that everyone was looking at him like he said something incredibly stupid. What did you just say? Ikeku said, calm but furious. Would you like to repeat that? Hisagi looked up in confusion. It just irks me for some dash, he tried to explain before Ikeku cut him off. Shihei, what are we? What is our title? He slowly stood up, glaring at the lieutenant. I believe we're called Soul Reapers, Shinigami, Death Gods. Do you know what this means, Hisagi? The Squad 9 lieutenant suddenly felt very nervous around the bald man. It means, we take lives. Hisagi. He roared at his fellow lieutenant. Any weapon with an edge is meant to kill and reap lives. My own Shikai is a stick. A fragile freaking stick. Do I think it's stupid? Do I disapprove of it? No. I master it. Because it's my weapon. He roared at the tattooed man. I don't care what half-assed sentimentality Tuan tried to teach you, but there's nothing that can be attained without bloodshed. He said as he rose up. While you waste your time, being all emo or whatever, I'll focus on my task. He turned to face the direction of Zaraki and Ichigo. Making sure I can keep up with my captain. Bankai! He roared, getting consumed by a whirlwind of Reishi, revealing 3 massive blades, a Shaolin spade and guando, connected by chains to a large axe blade. Ryumen Hojikameru! He yelled before leaping towards the main fight with Ichigo and Kenpeki. Yeah, he's right. Renji said before getting up. You're an idiot, Hisagi. Then he left to join the fight. You have such an ugly attitude. Yomishiki responded, deciding to have a drink with Captain Kiraku. No wonder Rainjiku is going for Ichigo. What? Hisagi cried, just now hearing about the matter. Yeah, Ichigo's getting himself a harem. Tetsuzumon explained. And pal, you never had a shot with her at all? Hisagi turned white and started to shrivel up like a dead plant. In fact, I think you should be disqualified from this game. I'll talk to the captain about that. He said as the last to walk away, leaving Hisagi to suffer his shock alone. With Kenpeki and Ichigo. The hollows were being slaughtered mercilessly as the two cut through them like grass. Kenpeki swung no Zarashi with enough force to create air blades and sheer brute strength to crush an Ajicha's head with one hand. Ichigo seemingly teleported around the battlefield, bisecting everything he cut with ease and giving himself more to his hollow nature. It didn't take long for the smarter hollows to realize the danger and attempt to flee. Unfortunately for them, the bait was too potent for them to think clearly. A large centipede hollow attempted a sneak attack on Ichigo before Ikeku slashed through its skull. He was accompanied by Renji, who summoned a massive skeletal snake. When the hell did you two learn Bankai? Kenpeki growled, punching a hollow into red mist. A little before Rukia's execution. Renji answered. Captain Kukaki said that mastering Bankai and attaining Bankai were 2 different things. I figured now was as good a time as any. He made his massive construct spin and grind away at most of the surrounding hollows. Zaraki turned to glare at his lieutenant. Forgive me, Captain. He said with a deep bow. I mastered my Bankai long ago. I just wanted to continue to serve under you, sir. He explained before Kenpeki threw him into the ground. You should have told me sooner. He yelled. I was expecting you to challenge me to a rematch for decades. Now you show you would have been a promising opponent? That pisses me off. Ikeku pried himself out of the ground. Now come on. The party's not over yet. He roared as jumped back into the fray, cleaving a dozen Jillian in half. Ikeku grinned as the dragon emblem on his axe filled up. Yes sir, Captain Zaraki. He roared, readying his blades, and accidentally cutting into Ichigo's back. Ah! The hybrid exclaimed. Watch where you're swinging that. I'm actually more surprised that I cut you. Ikeku said. Present day, Soul Society, Central Underground Prison, lowest level. And then I beat Ikeku into unconsciousness, waited till Zaraki got bored, and we called it a day. Ichigo told Anohana, who asked what her fiancé's bachelor party was like. I think I blacked out a few times and ate a Minos or 2, it kind of just blurs together. He finished recounting the story from what Yomishiki said in his own knowledge. Anohana simply smiled. Sounds like it was a lot of fun. She said as they continued to descend into the darkness. Appropriate for him, but still so childish. At least now he says he won't hesitate to kill his opponents because he says he's keeping a promise of only one opponent. You, Ichigo Kurosaki. The doors opened to reveal a massive dark room with sparse candle placements, making it seem to go on forever. Yes, you restored him to his true strength, undoing my greatest crime. She mumbled, though Ichigo heard her. I've been wondering, you two seem to know each other. Ichigo stated. What's the story, and why are we down here? He asked as the veteran captain turned to Ichigo, her gentle smile and look becoming more and more cold as she talked. The creation of the original Godei was millennia ago. She started. They were referred to as balancers and kept the balance of life and death, thus leading to the original war against the Quincy and Waiwak himself. She slowly began to undo her braid. The first generation was filled with nothing but thugs and killers. That lack of empathy made them known as the strongest and eventually ended the war with our victory. Genri Yusai founded this force and the institution that would train more soldiers, but the other captains were left to their devices. The first Kenpeki was known as the most diabolical criminal that Seoul society had ever known and set the roots of the 11th squad that is still adhered to even now. Ichigo's eyes widened as Retsu Anohana became a different person in front of him. One day, while looking for people to kill on the furthest edges of the Rukon lowest districts, the Kenpeki came across an animal in human form. Feral and beastly, this child knew no fear and attacked the Kenpeki with such power and bloodlust that the first Kenpeki knew she discovered her successor. Having been injured with the only scar on her body, she said, revealing her scar and becoming Yachiru Anohana, the first Kenpeki. You were the original Kenpeki? He asked, suddenly fearful of the woman. She let out a chilling laugh. I mastered all forms of swordplay and killed constantly to quell my thirst for blood. She continued to explain. Zaraki was the last fight I enjoyed as Kenpeki. Using the healing techniques I learned to prolong my fights, I became the captain of the 4th Division as Retsu Anohana. Unfortunately, in an effort to continue enjoying his fights from then on, he subconsciously made himself pathetically weak. I resolved to one day return him to his true power and die, making him the true Kenpeki. But then, you showed up. She said, walking toward him, making Ichigo feel like death was coming for him, making him freeze in fear. You fought him continuously, practically killing each other, and restoring him bit by bit. That was to be my final fight, Ichigo Kurosake, and you took it from me. She unsheathed her sword. You wanted training? Genri Yusai told me to teach you sword play. Before Ichigo could react, she slashed through his throat. First lesson, boy, reaction time. Ichigo coughed out blood as his neck healed, then she cut through his eyes. Don't worry, I can heal you from the brink of death. Just try to survive. Squad 11 Barracks. Kenpeki stood in front of his entire division, Ikeku kneeling next to his captain and covered in bandages. He bore a scowl that would match that of the hybrid currently training in the deepest depths of Seoul society. Everyone waited, under the heavy oppressive glare of the strongest berserker in all of the Godai. They shivered in fear, waiting for the man to say anything, jumping when he started growling. Your lieutenant recently revealed that he knew Bankai. He said. I fought him long before I became a captain and enjoyed the battle. When we met after I took the title of Kenpeki, I was expecting a rematch. Now he reveals that he was a captain-level fighter, a low-tier captain, but still. I missed out on a good fight, and that pisses me off. So, is anyone else hiding anything? He roared, making everyone cower as they professed their innocence and loyalty to their captain. Shut up. I hate secrets. In my opinion, they make everything ugly. He said while keeping an eye on Yumi Chika, who flinched when he said ugly. Something you want to say, Yumi Chika? The campy-seated officer went in front of his captain and knelt in front of him. I'm sorry, sir. He said to the berserker. I knew about Ikeku's abilities but kept silent since he asked me to. As for my own secret. His eyes drifted to his best friend, his captain, and his squad before he steeled his nerves. I don't have a melee-type Zapakuto. There was a loud collective gasp as Yumi Chika let out his biggest secret. He kept his eyes on the ground, waiting for Zaraki's judgment. Okay. What else? He asked, completely indifferent. Everyone looked at Kenpeki in shock of his complete disregard of the squad's unspoken rule. What can you really do? My Zanpakuto is really a Kido type. Yumi Chika elaborated. Tear in frenzy, Ruririo Kyojaku. He called out, letting his blade become a group of glowing peacock feather vines. Anything caught in these vines will have their Ryotsu stolen. To his back he could hear the murmurs among his squad, a look of shock on Ikeku's face hurt the most. I never wanted anyone to see this power because Squad 11 is full of melee fighters. I never wanted you to think any less of Desh, he tried to say before Zaraki unleashed his Shikai and slammed the massive handle against the ground, making everything shake and the ground fracture. Shut up. He roared again. I can barely hear you Michika over your damn chatter. I don't give a damn whether his abilities are melee or Kido based. He should be praised as the most loyal of all you. He turned to Yumi Chika again. Am I right in guessing that you would have rather died than reveal your real strength? He asked, making his prospective third seat nod. And you became one of my strongest fighters despite the handicap you put on yourself. I would have never figured it out, so why did you step up? Because, Yumi Chika stuttered, I didn't want to appear ugly in your eyes, Captain. Since when the hell did I care about beauty? He asked as Yumi Chika realized the lapse in logic. Aren't you marrying Captain Anohana? The one everyone agrees is the most beautiful woman in the Godii. Ikeku asked. Looks got nothing to do with that. Kenpeka told them. It's because that woman gave me this scar. He pointed to his scarred face, making everyone exclaim in shock. The first real enjoyable fight in my life. Always wanted a rematch with the first Kenpeka. He said, shocking his squad further. But, Ichigo's the only person I'll fight from now on, so I figured what the hell. Everyone stared at their captain in shock of the revelations, and the entire squad started panicking as they remembered their treatment of the 4th Division. Oh right. Yumi Chika, here's what'll happen. I don't want to see you here until you become proficient in Kido spells. After that, if anyone has the balls left to challenge you, fight to become 3rd seat again. He turned and left. And no holding back you punk. He threw over his shoulder as he walked away, the entirety of his squad having a collective freakout. Las Noches, Aizen's study. He was a patient man, waited centuries, played the nice guy, gained loyalties, and manipulated everyone while he built up his army. It was sure to pay off when he finally recovered Urahara's Hogyaku to strengthen his own and create his Aaron-Car while improving himself to become the ultimate being. He enacted his plan, retrieved the orb from Rukia's body, defeated Ichigo, and escaped, all as planned. However, it didn't take him long to learn the object he took was a decoy, a fake one with the same energy signature of a real Hogyaku, completely incompatible with a genuine article, and only able to create a scarce few incomplete Aaron-Car. His calm demeanor gave way to rage as he lashed out at having been outsmarted. His loyal aides were caught up in his wrath and both needed immediate surgery. Now he's calm and furious, watching and studying every single recording he has on Ichigo Kurosaki. Captain Aizen. Called out Jin as he entered the room. The Espada are waiting for you, sir. He was impressed that they managed to pull one over on Aizen. Now Aizen was studying his greatest experiment, and most dangerous wild card. The subject of the meeting today, who to send to gather data on that hybrid. Aizen rose from his chair and followed Jin to the meeting of his top 10 Aaron-Car. They reached the long table with the Espada flanking both sides, waiting for their master and his orders. Hello everyone. He said, calm as ever but with no trace of mirth. I've called this meeting because I have a mission to give to 2 of you. Each one gave a varied look of interest. I want intelligence on Ichigo Kurosaki. 2 of you are to go into the world of the living and gather information on him. For this, I've decided to send Ulquiro, he pointed to the pale white Aaron-Car with half a helmet, who has experience spying on Ichigo. I apologize for the lack of information on his growth, Lord Aizen. The white bat said with a bowed head. I shall not fail this time. Aizen nodded his approval before pointing to the largest of their group. And Yami Largo, whom I want to test Ichigo. The giant tanned Aaron-Car grinned in excitement. He's no doubt undergoing training to become a viable weapon against me and I want an idea on his growth. If you can capture him, do so. If not, kill him. He's too dangerous to leave alone. He rose from his throne to return to his study. Be sure to prepare yourself properly. He warned. We don't have the time to replace you if you die. He returned to the study and watched the image of Ichigo destroying Jinjo and Tsukishima again, paying close attention to the look of shock on the hybrid's face. Still just a boy. He murmured as he planned to strengthen his Hogyaku. Silbern, Waiwaka's throne room. The Quincy King looked over his assembled Sternritters, gathered by his second-in-command for the purpose of gathering information on his 2 lost children. The Heat, the Explode, and the Thunderbolt, interesting choices in his opinion. He remembered Bazby, the red-haired Mohawk Quincy who only got as strong as he did from Hashwaltha's ability to aid other Quincy's growth. He would turn Uriah back to his divine light, being one that formerly hated him and now serves willingly. Bambietta, the slender explode that had a tendency to kill his soldats to vent her petty anger, and Candace, the vain thunderbolt that focused more on her looks than her power, they would bring him Ichigo. Provided they knew the limits and rules of their mission. "You have been gathered here before me for a special mission," he said in his dark, rumbling voice. "One of the war powers, Ichigo Kurosaki, and the gemished Quincy that survived my holy selection, Uriah Ishida, seem to be siding with our enemies." A look of anger passed through his soldiers. "However, I would not see my sons slain for their misguidance. They know not their destinies. Instead, you are to bring them back to us, their real family. Do not force them, as they will resist, and only kill them as a last resort," he said before letting his power flare. "The two of them are more valuable than half of the Vandenreich. Do not fail me," he said, waving his hand to dismiss them. "Basbi, you will go to Uriah. Bambietta and Candace, Ichigo will be yours to sway," he commanded as they left. "Do you truly believe they can be swayed, your majesty?" the stern Ritter Grand Master inquired, remembering Uriah denouncing his kind during his battle with Mayuri. Many were furious with him abandoning his heritage, others were curious about his blasphemous equipment given to him by Urahara. He was an object of hate amongst many and a sign of rebellion against their father. "They are my children as well as any of you," Wywak dismissed casually. "My blood runs through them. They will return to the light, one way or another." Shiba household. Rukia and Rangiku followed Orium and Tatsuki as they went to see Mama Masaki. The way Orium and Tatsuki acted put them both on edge. As if they were going to their execution, which Rukia had experience with. Rangiku was interested to meet the woman that made her former captain shape up, and Rukia heard nothing but praise about her from the Kurosaka family. Now, they were terrified of incurring the matriarch's anger. Rukia had to meet her as they would soon be mother and daughter by law, and Rangiku wasn't about to back out when she felt this committed. They reached the Shiba grounds to find Karen and Yuza playing against the twin attendants, simultaneously training their Quincy powers to gain an edge against the older attendants with the adults watching. "Masaki Oka-chan," Orium called out, gaining the Quincy's attention. "We're back. And we brought some friends." Everyone stopped the game to meet the girls. Orium, Tatsuki, Rukia. Ishine cheered, running with a noticeable limp. "My third, fourth, and fifth daughters," he said, happily hugging the three, slowly taking note of his former lieutenant. "Hey Rangiku, here to visit your former captain?" he asked as the blonde Soul Reaper chuckled nervously. "Yep, and to be your sixth daughter," Tatsuki said with a mischievous grin that would not be out of place on Yoriyuki. Ishine paled and grasped the lieutenant by her shoulders. "Just run. Don't look back and don't dash," he tried to warn before feeling his wife's hand on his shoulder. "Hold on, Ishine," Masaka said slowly, already gaining a menacing aura. "I'd like to meet this supposed sixth daughter." She moved her husband out of the way and ran a critical eye over the lieutenant, then suddenly reached out and began to grope the bustiest woman of Soul Society. After a few seconds of that, Masaka gave her judgment. "Those boobs are too big." She pouted. "My Ichigo would never give in to someone who acts so shamefully. She actually reminds me of you a little," Ishine said, making his wife glare at him. "Remember how we first met?" Masaki actually took a second to reminisce. "Oh yeah." She giggled at the memory. "You were so flustered back then." Yeah. She's playful and lazy, but when it counts she's definitely someone you can rely on," Ishine explained as he came in front of his former lieutenant. "But this begs the question, why are you interested in Ichigo?" Rangiku actually blushed as she fished out Jin's letter. "He was doing what Jin asked, and I wanted to see what kind of person he was," she explained timidly. "So I made it tempting, like I was vulnerable and willing." She felt Masaka's demonic glare burn into her skin as she continued. "But he simply comforted me, didn't try to take advantage of the situation at all, and took care of me." Masaka lightened up on the glare. "I want to see more of who he really is." They waited until Masaka let out a sigh. Fine, but don't think I'm letting you do whatever you want. She then turned her attention to the diminutive Soul Reaper and Noble. So, you're Rukia Kukaki? She said, making Rukia feel like she's shrinking under Masaka's gaze. Just one thing before we get started. Rukia lowered her head, shaking in fear at whatever it was her future mother-in-law had to do. Then she felt something being placed in her head. You make such a cute bunny. Masaka squealed along with Orium and Rainjiku. I now have no trouble believing they're related. Rukia thought in deadpan as she, once again, had bunny ears on her head. Though the difference in actions is shocking. But in all seriousness, Kukaki-san, Masaka said while returning to a focused state of mind, and petting Rukia's head. I know what it's like to be forced to marry against your will. I myself was forced to play that part in politics with the Ishida family before I met Ishine. So I can sympathize with you. Well, I don't think I can protest too much. Rukia said, enjoying Masaka's strokes. He saved my life, made me feel better when I was sad, he saw me for me instead of a member of the Kukaki clan. All in all, I don't not like him. Masaka smiled, happy that her boy was becoming a splendid man after all. Ishine did alright without her. Okay fine. She said, relenting to her kinder nature. You can both pursue Ichigo. But no more naughty business until he's married. Got it. She growled, making the girls see a Hanaya apparition before her. They all nodded frightfully. Good. Now you have to prove yourselves. She said, releasing a sinister laugh. With Ichigo. Anohana ended their training, leaving Ichigo as a carved bloody mess on the floors of the prison. His regeneration was long since spent as she kept putting him on the brink on death, time and time again. She regarded him with disgust he never knew she was capable of before. Now he sat in meditation, trying to focus on controlling his Ryutsu, plagued by her words. How pathetic. She said to him. To think you've undone my greatest sin with such a cowardly resolve. You had your chances to block, fight back, even kill me, but you hesitated every time. There is only ever one Kenpeki, one unrivaled warrior among the Shinigami, every generation. The 9 between me and Zaraki were false Kenpekas and he should have killed me to take the title. And the worst of it is that a child like yourself freed him from his self-imposed binds. She healed him and dragged his tired body to return to the surface. You have the same problem he gave himself, you're scared of your own power. Afraid to kill again. Aizen and especially Wiwak will not have the same problem. We only beat the Vandenreich because of our ruthlessness. You are a soldier of Soul Society now, Ichigo. And no matter what anyone says, soldiers kill people. How you use that power is up to you. Her words replayed in his mind as he meditated, shattered his focus as he watched Jinjo and Tsukishima get destroyed by his power, then going for his friends. AHH. He screamed, causing a violent explosion of Reishi around him. He gasped for breath as the images faded from his mind. To his side was Genri Yusai, making tea in pure serenity. Something troubling you, my disciple? He asked as he finished brewing and poured out 2 cups. Something, Retsu said. Yes sir. Ichigo breathed out, sitting down across from the elderly captain and taking one of the cups to soothe his nerves. She told me about the history of the Godei, and called me pathetic for my hesitance in fighting again. They took a drink as Yamamoto mused over Ichigo's troubles. Those were indeed dark times, Ichigo. He spoke in a tired voice. I myself am ashamed of the things I've done. The death of Wiwak was necessary, but not all the Quincy. It was my own anger and arrogance that let the war get as terrible as it did. It was only your proof of Wiwaka's return did I compromise my own morals and let humans join the fight that we failed to stop. As for your current hesitation, I do not fault you, and Retsu is clearly mad at you for making her chosen successor spit in the face of the unspoken law of the Kenpeki. He set down the cup and looked at Ichigo directly in the eye, his stare reflecting over thousands of years of wisdom and experience. Ichigo, there is no doubt that you will be expected to end the lives of more people. Treasonous Shinigami, these Aaron Urahara speaks of, the Quincy, even more regular humans, if they present a threat that will not be swayed to peace or restrained, they will have to be put down. Not because the law dictates it, nor because their ideals or opinions clash with our own, but because they will not stop threatening that which we care for. I treasure the peace we now have and saw any criminal as a threat to that peace. You have to be willing to protect what you treasure, no matter the lengths or costs. Ichigo lowered his head in thought of what his aged teacher told him. Genri Yusai took the Eastern tea set and put it in front of the hybrid. Now, make the tea. He ordered as Ichigo took the items and repeated the ceremony his master taught him. Am I to return to the living world after today? He asked as he mixed the water and the sencha powder. He finished and poured the mixture for his teacher. Yes, Ichigo. The old dragon took a sip and smiled as he drank. As captain and lieutenant, you and your father must be there to oversee matters and keep the peace in the world of the living. Also to get more practice in making tea. This is nowhere near passable. He said bluntly, making the boy twitch in anger. Making tea was the last thing anyone ever thought to teach me, Gramps. Ichigo yelled in dignity. Your first lesson for me was how to throw a punch. Which still took 3 days, if I recall. Dismissed, Lieutenant. The ancient general commanded, making Ichigo get up and leave. Yes, terrible tea. But it did show me you're returning to a calm balance. Keep growing, my boy. Genri Yusai reflected before disposing of the tea. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Karin and Yuzu's first class. The two sisters wore the red and white uniform of Shino Academy and stood in front of the class as the teacher introduced him. These are Yuzu and Karin Kurosaki, daughters of Captainess Hine Kurosaki, said a gray-haired man, introducing the twins to the class. Because of their situation, they will be in class on a limited basis and they are not to be treated differently. If I found out about any bullying or special treatment, the perpetrators will be punished. He turned to the girls. Go take a seat. Karin found an empty spot for her and Yuzu, while Yuzu asked their new teacher a question. Sensei? We heard our brother will be training under the captain commander personally. She said, immediately getting the class talking. Some impressed, some angry at the arrogance of the half-breed. Will he be all right? Girls. I know Lieutenant Kurosaki impressed the commander, but he is too busy to waste his time taking on any student. He said as a black blur broke through the wall next to him and slammed into the back of the room, revealing Ichigo with a fist indentation in his stomach. Barely a tenth of a second later, Yamamoto appeared in front of him. And that's how you throw a punch, boy. He said sternly. Ichigo fell to the ground as rubble collapsed on top of him. I want 10,000 of those for each arm within an hour. If you run out of time, you start over. He turned around to walk out of the hole he made when he demonstrated what he wanted. Now get to it. The clock's ticking. Urayu and Nimu's date, aftermath. Urayu slowly woke up, remembering his forced date holding a cloth rag over his mouth and making him pass out. When he did, he was met with bright lights, a warm soft bed, an odd draft, restraints around his wrists and ankles, and a naked Nimu laying next to him. WH what's happening? He yelled as he tried not to stare at his bare companion. Oh good, you're awake. He heard Mayuri's voice coming from the speakers around the bright room. This is just an experiment we need you for. Don't worry, you might enjoy it, unless you're gay and prefer to bottom. What the hell are you talking about? Uriah yelled indignantly when Urahara apparently showed up. Mayuri, did you finish the what the hell are you doing? He yelled out. You should know better than this. Nimue, get over here. Uriah breathed a sigh of relief, believing Urahara could help. The lights suddenly dimmed to mimic candlelight as smooth jazz started playing and Nimue came out in tantalizing white lingerie. Uriah could only stare and blush at the artificial person. Much better. Continue. He said cheerfully. Someone help me. Uriah cried out. Rukia's initiation. Ichigo and Chad found Uriah in a rather compromising position and broke him out. Ichigo even punched Urahara in the face a couple times and ripped off Mayuri's arm. Now, safe from the insane scientist, they talked about their days. I think we made some progress on activating a second full bring for me. Chad told them. And Jackie seems to be making progress as well. Ryrika's been running into things all day though. You'd think at some point she'd stop listening to Jackie. I had a rather pleasant date at first. Uriah said, reminiscing. Visited some shops, got ideas to improve my own designs in needlework, a rather enjoyable chat, and a lovely picnic lunch. Then his mood soured. Until I spat out a pill and then got drugged, of course. And I still wonder if you really wanted us to save you like you said. Ichigo said, making Uriah shoot a glare at his cousin. And what happened to you, oh mighty lieutenant? He asked, making Ichigo look into the distance and start shaking. Worse than you, Uriah. He said cryptically. They reached the door of the Shiba household, with plans to enjoy their last day of the weekend. I just want to hit the hay as soon as possible. He opened the front door to find Rukia, in naught but an apron, pantyhose, and bunny ears. We welcome home DD darling, Pi and Dot. She said, looking at Ichigo. What would you like a ba-dot? Stopping when she noticed Chad and Uriah with him. Ichigo reached out and pet his fiancée before closing the door. Just in time to hear his mother start lecturing her on proper teasing foreplay. I wanna go home. Ichigo groaned. Chapter 35, The New Dimension. Soul Society, Squad 12 Labs. A few days had passed and the Kurosaka family made their return to the living world, putting off the union of the Kenpakus until the schedule cleared up for all parties. Urahara and Genri Usai hoped that the time away would either change Ichigo for the better, or give Anohana enough time to calm down and not slash him to pieces again. Unfortunately, there was no rest for the wicked as Squad 12 discovered some notable disturbances in the precipice world. Something was growing within the Danga. Okay, how's everything going? Urahara asked, taking a special interest in the disturbance. The initial scouting team has entered the precipice world and are attempting to enter the dimensional space. The Horned Akon told his captain. Good. Open communications. He ordered, analyzing the image that displayed the dimensional map. Immediately, things went to hell as the scouting force became trapped in the restrictive current. Screams and panic flooded into the rooms as the on-screen statuses declared an emergency, before disconnecting. That can't be good. Urahara said, glancing back at the map. And from the looks of it, the dimensional space is just getting bigger. Just what is happening? His inquisitive mind raced a million miles to try to find an answer to that question. I'm afraid that there's worse news. He heard the twisted voice of his lieutenant behind him. We've just lost contact with that foul-mouthed monkey boy. He said, making Urahara pause at the unusual phrase. Foul-mouthed monk. He repeated as his eyes widened. We lost contact with Hiri? Our communications with the living world are down. It appears that way. Mayuri responded. We were informing her of the dimensional disturbances when the feed just cut off. Fortunately, it seems like the Senkaimon is still active. Urahara moved to exit the facility. This has never happened before, something's controlling one of those dimensional pockets. He walked past Mayuri, making everyone look at the returned captain in surprise. I'm heading to the world of the living to get some answers. He paused before pointing angrily at his lieutenant. You stay here and monitor the situation, Mayuri. I don't want you near Ichigo. Not after what happened last time. The deranged skeletal clown scowled at his superior. It was a perfectly reasonable request. He protested. Even I don't want to check that unless absolutely necessary. Urahara yelled. Now, what's going on with this valley of screams? He muttered before flash-stepping to the Senkaimon gate. Karakura town. And we lost contact with Soul Society shortly after. Hiri told Ichigo over his cell. Keep an eye on your soul tracker for anything out of the ordinary. I'll wait for someone from Soul Society to show up and give us the details. Keep going with that training exercise, Lieutenant Baldy. She snarked before hanging up. Again with that stupid name. Ichigo grumbled, taking a look at his phone. During his stay last time, Urahara modified most of Squad 15's cell phones to track and identify souls, naming the device Soul Tracker. Right now, half a dozen Soul Reapers were fighting a single hollow. So it looks like we lost contact with Soul Society and we should keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. He told his cousin, who was helping while the rest of his fellow officers/friends were doing other jobs around town. Orium and Tatsuki were investigating something while Chad was looking for more Fullbringers. This left Ichigo and Uriah to help train the new recruits, almost fresh out of Shino Academy. Wonderful. Uriah groaned. Leave it to us, it's not like there's any apocalyptic, genocidal madman we need to worry about. He kept his eyes forward, focusing on the half-dozen green Shinigami fighting a lone hollow. A sickly green one that looked like an odd mix of monkey and frog with a lion's tail and red hair. What is the standard to graduate that academy? Uriah asked, annoyed that it was taking the unit so long to kill the one hollow. Not the same we were held to, Ichigo said as he walked up next to the Quincy. 2 minutes passed. Shall we? He asked as he manifested a red and black bow of Reishi. Uriah smirked and manifested his own black and blue, solid bow. Wanna make this harder for me? Uriah challenged his cousin. A specific area. The two were silent as they aimed from their vantage point among the treetops, from a kilometer away. 1 inch under the left eye. Ichigo responded after thinking. That's your mark. I said a challenge, Ichigo. Uriah said arrogantly, just before they released the spiritual bolts. The 2 black arrows raced toward the hollow in question, threading past the Soul Reapers in the way, and slamming into their mark. Ichigo's bolt buried itself in the middle of the hollow's forehead and Uriah's hit exactly where Ichigo challenged him to. Told you. Just go yell at them already. Ichigo growled as they prepared for high-speed movement. I'm going to see to this soul that the hollow was chasing. Uriah looked at his cousin disappointed. Why do I have to be the bad cop? He asked, continuing his look of disappointment. Ichigo was unaffected. You can't perform Kenso, you're the third seat while I'm the lieutenant, and you love being bad cop. Ichigo listed off with ease as his phone rang. Uriah shrugged as he acknowledged the truth in Ichigo's words. They went to their chosen locations, Uriah with the rookies and Ichigo with the soul of the little girl. She wore her hair in 2 small buns and a pink hoodie with a white shirt underneath. Don't be scared, he said with a brotherly smile. You're safe now. You won't be chased by those monsters anymore. He offered his hand, which the little girl hesitantly took. It's going to be fine, he said, tapping her forehead with Zanjutsu's Kashira. She glowed before disappearing as a ball of light. Now to get to the group before Uriah makes them cry, again. He groaned as he went in the direction of Uriah's yelling. 2 minutes. He shouted at the assembled rookie Soul Reapers. You had 2 minutes to eliminate 1 weakling hollow. There was 6 of you, you should have coordinated an attack of some kind. We seated officers won't always be there to hold your hands. Half of the group looked ashamed by their poor show, others were getting pissed at the upstart human, before Ichigo revealed himself. Your failure to actually kill that weakling of a hollow aside, you all contained the potential damage and did corner him, he said, walking up next to his cousin. But Uriah is right. You need to step it up because at some point, something stronger than these fodder hollows will show up. For now, dismissed. They called out a resounding sir before heading off for the squad barracks at the Shoten. At least none of them are crying this time. That was one time, Ichigo. Uriah moaned. They won't improve if we coddle them, he said before Ichigo's soul tracker went off. The two took a look at the reading and they were blank. Nothing to indicate hollows or pluses, it was just a bunch of souls at the train station. That's odd, Uriah said before the phone rang. Yeah, I saw it, Hiri, Ichigo said as he answered the phone. Something's off about this, Ichigo, she said in a rare moment of seriousness. I've never seen or heard about anything like this. Go check it out, there might be some answers as to what the hell is going on. On my way, Ichigo said as he hung up. Uriah, head back to the Shoten in case Urahara shows up, then try to decipher his techno-babble. All right. Watch yourself, Ichigo, the Quincy said before disappearing in a burst of speed, an action Ichigo emulated shortly after. Karakura train station. What the hell? Ichigo arrived to find hundreds of cloudy humanoid spirits with dark pink pin-like heads. They had no expressions, no energy, they were just blank. All of them were wandering about aimlessly, sometimes examining something before walking off again. "This is certainly out of the ordinary," he said, putting his phone to his ear and calling Hiri. "Hey, Area 3-8-8-8. I think I found something," he said, trying to perform a Kenso on one of the strange souls with no results. "Hiri?" he asked, getting nothing but static as the souls began moving more aggressively. He switched out his phone for his badge and got the same results. "And now communications are off with the Shoten. Wonderful," he muttered as he was surrounded. A sudden wind picked up and the blank souls turned toward him with their colored heads becoming red as they reached for him. He knocked them back with ease, pulling out his sword as more and more surrounded him. He used a Pesquisapulse and felt 4 notable presences. Scanning, he saw 3 wearing green and weird armored breastplates, and a female Shinigami wearing a red ribbon around her waist and a yellow one in her purple hair. She practically danced through the souls like a gust of wind, cutting each one down with ease before flying up on a pillar of wind. Ichigo jumped onto a building as lightning built up in her tornado. "Bring them to the twilight, Morokumaru," she called out, turning her katana into a Buddhist Kukhara staff, connecting the ring with her tornado and wiping out the blank souls with a tunnel of wind and lightning. She cleared out the area in seconds with a burst of wind as the only evidence of the battle. Ichigo scanned the area again, but the other 3 beings just vanished without a trace. "This calls for a visit to Urahara," Ichigo said as he dropped to the ground, letting out a loud whistle to signal Khan to bring him his body. "What were those things?" he asked, looking around for the other Shinigami. He could have sworn he met every new member of the squad. He noticed her dancing around like a happy kid, already in her Jigai. "Gonna be one of those days, isn't it?" he thought as he walked over to her. "Yes, yes, yes," she cheered. "Oh, that felt so good." She stopped when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to Ichigo with his usual scowl. "What do you want?" she rudely demanded. "Nice job out there," he said, making her smile cheerfully. "Pretty impressive work. What's your name and graduate or transferee?" he asked the active girl. "Name's Senna." "Nice to meet you," she said, holding out a hand. "And, well." She started looking around before gasping and running toward the window. No, no, no. This is bad." She started examining her reflection. "Yellow isn't my color," she said, coming to the sudden fashion conclusion. Ichigo looked at the ribbon in her hair. "Yeah. Red would work better." He paused, realizing he just said that. "I've been around Uriah way too much." He sighed, regretting that he thought about fashion before work. "Anyways, I'm Ichigo Kurosaki, the lieutenant in charge of the Shinigami here," he told her as she turned to face him. "You know what those things were, or did you just attack them without thinking about it?" he asked as Khan showed up with his body, letting him get inside it. He heard her giggling. "If you wanna know, you have to catch me," she said before running off. "Definitely one of those days," Ichigo mumbled before chasing after the girl. Soul Society, Squad 9. Hisagi wandered around his squad barracks, sulking from the aftermath of the party. His crush was going after a child that outclassed him in practically every aspect and was mocked horrendously by the other guys at the party. Even the Quincy had the nerve to mock him, all because he disapproved of his Zanpakuto and the philosophy he learned with his former captain. He still respected Tuan greatly, despite the man's misguided belief in Aizen's path. He found his fellow lieutenant and current captain, Mashiro, and Kensei, training some of the squad and decided to consult the man that saved him a century ago. "Kensei? Is Hisagi an idiot?" Mashiro asked after Shihei finished telling them about his troubles. "Unfortunately for the second lieutenant," Kensei agreed. "Yep, that's a pretty stupid problem you have there, Hisagi," Kensei said bluntly. "Zaraki can't find many people to match him in power and strength. Ichigo matched that man and needs 2 seals to protect the people around them. Old man Yama has the strongest offensive power in the entire Gotei. Do any of these guys seem afraid of their power? Hell no. They learned to master and harness their power. Sure, Ichigo's going through a rough patch, but he just learned how powerful he is when he annihilated those Fullbringers. He scolded the lieutenant, who hung his head in despair. Fear of your power is the worst thing you can do, especially when you want to protect people. You have to strive to overcome that fear. It's not fear of one's power that makes a warrior, it's the courage to act in spite of that. Captain. Hisagi breathed, rethinking his long-standing philosophy. He was defined by fear, the fear to act in the face of danger, the fear to pursue Rangiku only to be rejected, creating fear in his opponents, fear of his own blades, and fear of failure. As warriors and defenders, we can't afford to let fear control us when we need to fight. Either to save or to kill. Kensei continued. If it looks like it was meant to reap lives, then reap the lives of those that are irredeemable. The enemies that threaten everything you care about. Kensei gave the boy a smile that was out of place on the usually stern man. Hisagi felt tears come to his eyes. Yes, sir. Thank you for your guidance. He said gratefully, making the silver-haired captain smirk. Can't help with the love problems though. Guess you're screwed there. Kensei said, purposefully ruining the tender moment. On another note, what the hell is that? He asked, pointing to a widening portal in the sky. That looks like Karakura town. Mashiro said, squinting at the sight. I see Ichigo. Hi Berry-tan. She screamed as the two men looked at the childish lieutenant. Hisagi was about to say something before Kensei stopped him. Just roll with it. I'm heading to the inevitable captain's meeting. He groaned. With Ichigo. Ichigo chased after Senna, who was giggling without a care in the world as they ran through the city in their human bodies. He felt something was up with the hyperactive girl, just not what it was. Suddenly, she veered off to the railing and looked up to the Ferris wheel in the city. Ichigo. Look. She exclaimed happily, looking up to the tall rotating structure. I've always wanted to go on one. She gazed at the machine in amazement, looking back when Ichigo put his hand on her unsuspecting shoulder. There, I caught you. He said, confusing her for a second before remembering what she said. Yeah, now what were those things and why did you attack them? I don't know. She said as she skipped away, twirling a bit now and then. I just felt like I should get rid of them. She said, pointing to her forehead. Instinct, you know. I'm familiar with the concept, yes. Ichigo admitted, thinking back to Zanjitsu. She doesn't know about those white things and I swear I already met all the new recruits. Ichigo thought to himself as he watched her dancing about, simply enjoying life. I still haven't heard anything from Hiri and I should report about that incident. Ichigo was so lost in thought, he never noticed Senna walking right up to him and booping his nose. Tag. You're it. She said before running off, giggling the whole way. He grunted as he chased her into the shopping plaza, going past stores and crowds of people, losing her and finding her again by her laughs. Finally, after a half hour of chasing her around, she lost him and he stopped looking. He was looking into the crowd and saw Urayu, gesturing for him to follow. Crap. He muttered, swallowing Khan's pill form and exiting his body. Senna. I have to go back to base. He shouted, prompting her to come out. Ah. She whined. I was having fun. I figured, but I have a job to do. He said as he headed toward the Quincy. Stay in the area and out of trouble. You got it L.T. She exclaimed, giving a mock salute before running off, Khan going after her. New recruit? Urayu asked, feeling a similar suspicion his cousin did. Maybe. I went to the train station and found these things and she got rid of all of them. Ichigo responded as they picked up speed. She seems to be a soul reaper, but when I asked whether she was a transferee or graduate, she dodged the question with complaining about her hair ribbon. Urayu just sighed. Yeah. Wants a red one instead of a yellow one. I'll do it when we get back to base. Urayu said, already thinking about how to make it. In the meantime, Urahara is already here and wants a report. He says he has an idea of what's happening. Of course. Because Kisuke knows everything. Ichigo groaned, not surprised by the eccentric scientist. How does he seem to know everything? I just assume he got bored one day and read the entire Central Library of Soul Society for fun. The Quincy said, which both boys could legitimately believe. Urahara's Shoten/Squad 15 barracks. Ishine, Urahara, Hiyori, and Ichigo were sitting around the small table to discuss what was currently happening. Uriah was making the ribbon and Lisa was checking the squad roster for any mention of Senna. Urahara was just informing them of the situation with help from his previous lieutenant, who held up the picture descriptions, after Ichigo gave his report. Then we lost all contact between Soul Society and the living world, and just before I went through the Senkaimon, a portal opened to reveal the world of the living. He started the simplifying of a complicated talk. There are 4 major dimensions: the world of the living, Soul Society, the realm of the Hollow Hueco Mundo, and just recently the Quincy Empire of the Vandenreich. Separating all these worlds is the Precipice World, navigable with the various dimensional portals that each group has made. However, the Precipice World is littered with dense pockets of Reishi from souls that fall out of the reincarnation cycle. These pocket dimensions are called Valleys of Screams, and from these come the souls you've encountered. They are called blanks because with the loss of their Reishi, they also lose their memories. Normally this is of no concern as they eventually return to the cycle, until a certain bachelor party caused a massive influx of souls. He said, giving a pointed glare at his student. So this is our fault? He asked, feeling numb from the realization. Nope. Kisuk said, pulling out his fan. I'm just mad I wasn't invited. He pouted, prompting everyone to punch him in the face. Continuing, he said after a bout of healing, this particular Valley of Screams is located in the middle of Soul Society and the living world, opening a gateway of kinds but only visually as it's gradually growing for some odd reason. Connecting 2 worlds is something that has never happened before. Do they get their memories back? Ichigo asked the captain. Could there be another party causing this? Urahara leaned back and gazed up in thought. The memories merge together into something called the Shininju or Memory Rock. That collection of memories finds its way back into the world of the living and attracts the blanks to it. Urahara rubbed his chin in thought. The rapid expansion of this Valley of Screams does seem like a third party is behind everything happening, which means they've learned to harness the power within the blanks and the Valley of Screams. How much time would that take? Ishine asked, already planning search parties to look for the Shininju. That would be new territory since there's no documented record of anyone controlling and harnessing the blanks, so time may vary. Hiyori chimed in. Years to discover, more to master. Urahara said. You told us you saw a few guys in strange armor. He looked to Ichigo. Yeah, they were dressed like Shinigami except with green instead of black. Ichigo described the figures he saw. Green breastplates and berets. Except for one guy, he had a scar on the left side of his face and long white hair. Urahara seemed to recognize the description, but he needed to do more research. If someone is behind these current events, then I doubt it's anything good. Urahara warned as he got up. I'll see what we can find in Soul Society, while you guys in Squad 15 step up your patrols. Indeed. Ishine agreed. We have to find the Shininju as soon as possible. Then I recommend Lieutenant Ichigo stays close to this Senna girl. They hear Lisa say as she came into the room. I've double-checked the records. There's nothing about a Shinigami named Senna transferring to our squad. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Best chest. Ichigo woke up, ready to leave Soul Society and return home to whatever counts as normal in his life now. He got out of his room in the Shiba household and grabbed some breakfast. He was so groggy from waking up, he didn't realize what he was walking into. Okay, so for size is self-explanatory. Masaka spoke out. Then there's perkiness, firmness, sensitivity, and use. Ready girls. A chorus of ready rang through the hall just as Ichigo opened the door. Upon doing so, his blood raced as he saw Orium, Tatsuki, Ranjaku, Rukia, Kyokaku, Yoriyuki, and his mom, all topless. And look, we have a judge. Masaka said with a smile as Ichigo slammed the door shut and ran for the back exit. Why do I open doors? Ranjaku's initiation. Ichigo finished a long day of school after coming back to the world of the living. Afterward, he had to patrol a good chunk of the city and chase down 3 weak hollows. Needless to say, he was looking forward to getting home and to bed. The problem was that Rangiku and Rukia tagged along to get to know their new allies better. Something Ichigo didn't trust. He reached the door and sighed. Something's going to happen. Something always happens. He groaned as he hesitantly opened the door. He pulled it open and Rangiku was just coming out of the kitchen, wearing an apron. She seemed to exude serenity with a gentle, mature aura surrounding her. "Welcome home, darling. She said with a gentle smile as she walked up to him, planting a quick kiss on his lips. "You seem exhausted." She helped him out of his jacket and took his skull bag. "Go on inside the kitchen and eat your dinner, I've made curry," she said before heading up the stairs. "I'll go draw a bath for us," she teased as she ascended the stairs. A few seconds passed before he finally realized she was wearing just an apron. Meanwhile, Masaki and Ichigo's other lady friends were watching the scene in shock by how Rangiku went through it. "My third daughter." Masaki cheered out, making Orium, Tatsuki, and Rukia gasp in shock. "What happened last time?" Mayuri was overjoyed with the rich sample he got out of Ichigo's arm. There were other things he was eager to test. The first time he asked Ichigo for more samples. "Ichigo, would you mind giving some of that Chidinu's hollow armor?" he asked as Ichigo wandered through the research labs. Ichigo created small plates and gave them up. The second time he asked, "Ichigo, there's something strange about your Reishi but your arm doesn't have any left. Mind filling this up?" Mayuri asked, giving him a Reishi conductive stone. There were no problems there. Third time was the last time. Ichigo dash. "What do you want now, Mayuri?" Ichigo asked, turning to the scientist, who had a jar in one hand and a few naughty pictures of Nemu in the other. "Nothing much," he said before Ichigo punched him in the face. Check the description for the links to the author.